All right, so you're going to face each other, and then, oh, I like the adaptation with Pablo's height there. Very well done, everyone. So you're going to practice now. So educators in the room, if you can just get them started, we've got like 30 seconds to a minute. I just want them to get practiced at literally counting to 3. Away you go.
There was my whole point. 1, 3, 2. 1, 3, 2.
Okay, time, people, time. So obviously counting to 3 is easy enough. So stay in your partners, because now we're going to replace the number 1. Okay, so instead of 1, 2, 3, it's 2, 3, 2, 3. So when you're on 1, you don't say 1 anymore. You just clap. Away you go. Okay, time. All right, I think you know where I'm going with this. So now we've got 2, 3. Now what we're going to do, is you've got clap for 1. You've got, okay, can you see the double stamp? So it's 3, 3. Away you go. Okay, time. I can see there's absolutely no mistakes happening anywhere. It's just so amazing to watch how these sharp razor-like brains are working. So obviously you know that I'm going into the number 3 now. So we've got for 1 and 2, okay? So now we go into 3. I call it a star blah, yeah? So you're gonna do a star jump and go blah. Let me just show you the facial expression. Blah, okay? That's 3, okay? So it's 1, 2, 3, except you're going blah, go. I don't want to call time, but I'm going to call time because it's way too amusing to listen and watch. Well done, team. That was very entertaining. I hope you found it as entertaining as I did. We've got you moving and we got your brains working. Okay. So that really is what we're all about. Okay. Is that we want to bring movement and the mental, emotional, and physical world into your world. So thank you for engaging so completely in that. Now, it's my first real gift to you, to be honest with you, because I brought that back from, I was in America, I was in like Florida on a course way back 20 something, 12 maybe. And there was this awesome speaker and he did that as a kind of part of his warm up for like a speech he was about to deliver. He got someone on stage and just messed around with them basically. But what I loved is I took that away and then we made it into this 1-2-3 game, because what you can do, the power of that isn't just like, you know, Rich Ellis, who's also an author, he's used that at corporate events, for example. Richard Beddy, the CEO of Exercise New Zealand, has used it at a meeting in Europe. I forget the city, Brussels, I think it was, at the World Health Organization. It's one of those amazing things that you can take anywhere. But what I love about it is, if I've got a professional rugby team, say, well, I'm not going to get them clapping and stamping. I'm going to get them doing something much bigger than that. You know, it might be that number one is drive in and, you know, tackle your partner. You know, it could be get to the floor, get back up again. It can be full on exercise, sport specific, high intensity. Or you could do that with someone who's chair bound and do your own versions of those. You see what I mean? How it can engage body and brain together. So you can adapt that to anything. And for me, you know, as in group settings, it's brilliant. One-on-one, it tends not to be, because people feel really uncomfortable doing it with you one-on-one. But in group settings, better. The bigger the group, I find, the better it is as well, because there's just everyone's kind of doing it. There's a certain vibe to that. And for some reason, you can get away with a whole heap more in a large group than in a small group. I've never understood that. But some of the things I say, I know would be fine in front of 2,000 people, but are very inappropriate in front of 3. Let's get back to my screen. All right. So I always like to make sure that I pay homage to my teachers. You know, I'm your teacher for this experience. I'm hopefully I'm a bit more than that. I'm hopefully your guide and a coach and a mentor for you guys as well. But I've been lucky enough, you know, the things that I included in the mentorship, I've learned them from other brilliant people as well. And then I've added, you know, my experience of the last 11 years and working with 1,000 clients. And I've honed it and brought more education into it and added my own kind of knowledge and reading around these areas. But really, where I've started is, hey, look, that's up in the top left-hand corner there. That's Thomas Myers. He wrote the book Anatomy Trains, from which these posters are taken. I'm lucky enough to have worked with the guy that did the dissections and wrote the book. He wrote the Bible for what we do, myofascially speaking. The guy in the middle at the top there is Dan Duran. So he was the head man at PTA Global, where some of the forms and systems that I use towards you'll see on Sunday have been adapted from. And I was an ambassador and a what they call a featured author for PTA Global for a couple of years, a global education company. Top right there, that's Mike Fitch and Karen Ma from Animal Flow. So we'll be doing some of that on Saturday. I'll be introducing you to that if you've not done it before, and you'll be reviewing and enjoying a new session if you have. And again, where did I learn that from? From the creator of Animal Flow. And then down in the bottom left-hand corner, the guy on the right as you're looking at the screen, that's Michel Dalcourt, the head of the Institute of Motion in the States. Some of them, the most brilliant scientific evaluation from around the world, crystallized by him in the Institute of Motion and put out to the world for people like me to be able to understand it. I was mentored by him for 3 years. Matt Truscott is the other guy on the right. He was the Viper Global Educator. I was also a Viper Master Instructor for 3 years as well. So that taught me the whole kind of loaded movement training piece, which again, we'll be connecting with on Saturday. You know, Dwyer, bottom right there, we wouldn't have myofascial mobility if it weren't for that man. He is a brilliant creative mind. He's got one eye, but with his one eye, he sees 4 times more than everyone else. He's been described as a movement savant, and I would actually agree with that description. He sees stuff that no one else sees. So he, again, 4 years of mentoring with OD, as we call him, that changed my life too. And then finally, that quote, there is no correlation between being serious and actually being good at what you do. The guy on the left of the screen there is Dr. Perry Nicholson. I've done a little bit of education with him. I've been lucky to meet him on a few occasions. And on the right, there's a very familiar face, Stuart Gillespie, to Corinne, who has changed her life in the last couple of years with the functional medicine stuff as well. So I've been lucky enough to rub shoulders with a lot of very cool people along the time. They definitely changed my life. They definitely played a role in creating what you now are going to be going through this next few days. But as always, the expression of what this is my own. Yeah, it's like, okay, I've gathered these different pieces from different places, and I owe the knowledge, but what we then create is our own. Now, I don't say that in an arrogant way. I say that in a way so that you can understand that when you take next level into your own movement practice, into your businesses, and into your own expression of that, it's exactly what you should do. I don't want you to do next level like I do next level. It's that, to me, means that I have failed you. What I want you to do, I'm just going to stop the share for a moment. This is a really important point. What I want you to do is take this stuff away and make sure that the way it is expressed is uniquely you. Yeah, it's like genes and epigenetics. Yeah, so we've got this collection of genes, but actually the environment that our genes go through across our lifetime means that certain genes expressed in certain ways more powerfully and others don't. Others get switched off, others get switched on, others get expressed more powerfully. And that's our unique epigenetic expression of the world. Yeah, that is the same with next level. You take this stuff on board. I'm going to give you the pure version. It comes in, it mixes with your DNA, and then the way you express next level is completely your own. And that is one of the things that you'll see with Corinne and Karina and Emma and Nikki, is that they are all vastly different people working in quite different ways, but then they make the next level work for them. And everyone should go away and have their unique brand, their unique expression of next level. So we're not trying to fit you to this. We want this to fit around you. And that's the message really that I want you to take away. I don't want to create a whole load of JPs around the world. Yeah. What I want to do is create a whole load of individual, unique, authentic, passionate human beings that use some strategies and practices and knowledge that they have brought home from the next level. That, for me, is the true power of it. If we create just another me, we've failed, okay? We want to create a bigger, better, more authentic, happy you. That's what that's all about. I get carried away, quite passionate along the way, as you probably gathered. The reason I get passionate is because this is what I truly believe right down to the cellular level. This is what I want for you guys. It is very much, much as I make jokes and make things about me sometimes in a jokey fashion, nothing's about me. It's all you. The whole reason I'm here is you. So very quick run through on this stuff, because you've seen it before, but it's kind of nice to just review this stuff. So we've got this traditional view of the body, 622 muscles doing 622 separate jobs, but really, is that the case? And my little bit in green at the bottom there, I want you guys just to have a walk around. And what you're going to do when you're walking around is, yes, you are going to feel yourself up. And what I mean by that is all I want you to do is wander around with your hands on your glutes. And I want you to take note of when you're walking around, where do you feel activation in your butt? Okay. Because if everyone just stands up for a moment, this is always a nice moment when I get everyone to stand up and grope themselves. It's certainly brings me pleasure. So if you stand up for a moment, let's just make sure that what our traditional knowledge is actually correct, because it should be. If you put your hand on your butt like that and then you take 1 foot back, yeah, can you feel the glute firing up? So it's like bang. Oh yeah, it fires up. Definitely fires up there. I can feel it. Hopefully you can feel it too. If anyone can't feel it, then you might want to report in, because we might need to help you a little bit more. Because the glute extends the hip, and it says it in all our textbooks. The glute extends the hip, and when we do this, we go, well, let's just extend the hip. It's just like, yep, the glute does extend the hip because I can feel the glute switching on. Done. End of story. Move on. But let's do some other stuff though. If we actually get you walking around the room, what I'd love you to do is take note of when you do feel the glute fire, because that would be kind of interesting. So walk around the room. If you're not quite getting it, you might just extend your gait a little bit and see what you feel. You might just extend your gait, see when you feel glute fires. Now, because we're on a video link here, I'm just going to ask the question in a slightly leading way. But hopefully you can feel that as your foot strikes the ground, on foot strike, you can feel the glute activate. Are we getting general consensus? Someone put a thumb to the screen. If we're getting general consensus that you can feel your glute activate, great, when you actually strike the ground. So on foot strike. Now the next thing to do is tell me when it switches off. Yeah. So in other words, you're going through and you go, yep, bang, I feel it switch on. And then when does it go off? Yeah. If you can't kind of do it whilst you're walking, because there's a little bit too much going on both sides, I sometimes just get people to foot strike and then just come through slowly and then go back and go again. Foot strike, go through slowly. When does it switch off? So take note of that. So you're going through that. You feel it activate on foot strike, and then it switches off at some point. That same side switches off at some point. Now, depending on reports from the room, what commonly happens is that you feel the glute switching off. So it's on here, bang, foot strike. And as you get over the top of your hips, either you feel it fully switch off or actually really down regulate, as it were. And as your foot comes through, it actually switches off completely on that foot strike side. Bang. All right. Can someone put a thumb to the screen if that's what's happening? Yeah, you can feel the switch off. All right. So this is where it's really cool, because we've got this situation where we're going, okay, then the glute is all about extending the hip. But what we've just done is we've activated here. Okay. Now this, I don't know, like for me, this is what we call hip flexion, not hip extension. Yeah. And the irony being that as we come through and go into extension, the glute's off. It's actually switching off at that point. So we've got this situation where we're like, okay, so we've got this 622 muscle model of the body. Glute extends the hip. We've just tested that the glute extends the hip. It did extend the hip. Done. Then we test it with something as common as gait. And the glute fires in flexion and switches off in extension. So in other words, the opposite of what we've just proved to be true from the textbooks with our own bodies. Our own bodies have done 2 separate results from those 2 tests. because there's a whole heap more going on than just what they used to do with cadavers, which is stick electrodes into a cadaver, into a muscle, and see what happens. Let's just stick an electrode into the bicep, bang, oh, it flexes the elbow. Okay, then bicep flexes the elbow, except it actually also guides this action when I go out like that as well. So when I extend, that is also on. Ah, okay, yeah, we didn't do that bit, because they can't prove that. When you stick electrodes into cadavers, you can't give any impression of what happens with a live human in movement dependent upon orientation to gravity. So there's a whole heap of other things in the mix there, right? So that's number one. Don't go anywhere, because I'm going to get you doing something else in just a second, but I'm just going to quickly jump back into the slides just so that, you know, it was worth preparing them. So then we've got this idea of, okay, then if myo is muscle, we're not a muscle system, we're a myofascial system. Fascia is the connective tissue. So you've looked at those and you go, okay, then suddenly we're looking at a more interconnected view of what's going on. So at the bottom in green again, I've got another kind of little message for you guys. Does your foot control your shoulder? So for those guys who haven't managed to get to review the materials yet, let's just quickly do this. And again, so educators in the room, you may need to help in terms of foot position and stuff for this one, because obviously we need to make sure the feet go the right way when we get to it. But I'm going to get you to point your feet, preferably to the screen, but if you want to point them to a wall, point your feet in one direction. Yeah, look at them, make sure they're not pointed outwards or in a funny direction. Point straight ahead. Bend the knees slightly. I'm going to get you to take your right thumb, provided your right arm is feeling comfortable today and your right shoulder's all good. If not, use your left. You can see I've got my thumb there, and with a slight bend in the knees, remember, you're going to allow your body to rotate as far as you possibly can, so you can see where does that thumb point towards. And you might want to do that a couple of times. How far around can you rotate? And what is your thumb pointing at behind you? Take a marker of what's on the wall or what's in the room from that point of view. And what you're going to do in a second now is you're going to do that again, but your left foot is going to just be moved onto the outside edge like that. So you're literally just going to move your foot. So you take that to the outside edge. I can show you with my feet. I'm literally going to just do that. But actually, your ambassadors in the room will help you do that. So, and now, having done that and put your left foot like that, making sure both knees are still slightly bent, you're going to rotate again and see how far you get. Now, unless you have hypermobility, some form of hypermobility issue or hyperflexibility, what you'll probably note is that there's a massive difference between point one without the foot change and point number two. Did everyone feel a limitation in their rotation? Yeah, are we getting, stick a thumb up? Yep, they're great. And then, so we've got a limitation in rotation based upon just that slight change in foot position. Now that's crazy, isn't it? Because for some of you, if I'd have told you before the mentorship that I'm going to prove that your left foot will prevent your right shoulder from moving, in my case, 40 degrees of rotation, I will be lost just by doing that with my foot. It's difficult to get people to believe that, okay? But also, we might get some smart people in the room just going, well, I'm not sure he's done a kind of a great test for soft tissue there, because what he's actually done, he's just moved his foot like that, and he's locked the talus bone in the foot. So by locking the talus bone, all JP's really done is he's put a skeletal lock in the system. So that's not even a soft tissue thing. He's put a skeletal lock in the system, and that's what prevented the rotation. So we've caught him out. So he's actually a fraud because his test doesn't work, because he's done a skeletal thing rather than a soft tissue thing. And I'm going to reply to all you smart people out there. You're absolutely right. It was a nice, simple way of showing the connection between left foot and right shoulder. But if that were the case, how about we do the soft tissue version of that to still prove our point? to still show that it's a myofascial thing, not a skeletal thing. Wouldn't that be cool? And those smart people go, I challenge you to do that. Great, let's take that challenge. So let's start again, and I'm going to get you to point both your feet in a particular direction, and you're going to not do anything with them, just point them in that direction. I want you to do a retest, because you might go a bit further this time. Slight bend in the knees, remember. Rotate as far as you can, mark where you get to. Now, what you're going to do now is, instead of actually putting the foot onto the outside, you are going to lift strongly your left arch. You're going to pull your left arch right up so that that tissue in between, you've got a really amazing arch, to the point where it's almost feeling like uncomfortable because you're having to activate it so powerfully, yeah? So activate that really, really powerfully, and then repeat your turn with your right arm. So left arch, lift as high as you possibly can. Activate, keep it activated, and then turn. The irony for me is most people do go a little bit further than the skeletal lock. I go less far. So for me, can we get a few thumbs in the room? Can you feel the change still? Can you still feel the limitation as a result of holding your arch up? Yes, right. So what the hell's going on in both of those scenarios? So number one, the walking around, showing the opposite of what the textbooks are showing us from a traditional point of view. Can someone kind of tell me what on earth is happening there? i.e., why does that glute activate? And how come it's activating at a different time to everything else? Is anyone want to kind of come up close to the mic and tell me something or speculate? Remember, it doesn't matter what you say. There is no judgment. You cannot say the wrong thing. We're just going to add to whatever it is that you say. But does anyone want to contribute to that before I kind of launch into my big thing? Does anyone want to just go, well, I think it's because of this? So shit, JP, no one's that brave. You an idiot. Thought you were smart. All right. So let me ask you this then. There's two elements that we exist in, or two elements that environmental things that happen. There's something pushing down on us all the time on the planet that we live. And I'm guessing that someone might know that word. So throw that at the screen for me, please, just so that I know that you're alive. Everyone's, yeah, great. So I've heard the word gravity. This is awesome. That's great. So that shows that you're a human being living on planet Earth. Okay, and then something else happens with gravity. Something else happens when our bodies, our feet in this case, are hitting the ground. What do we get back? What is that called? That thing that happens and that we get back? Am I hearing ground reaction force?
Yes.
I'm so pleased that I'm hearing ground reaction force. Thank you, everyone who said that. All right. So ground reaction force. So we've got gravity and ground reaction force happening. So what is switching on your glute? Because when we do the glute, the extension of the hip, that's a conscious action. That's a brain. That's a command to the leg. It's very two-dimensional in nature. It's a conscious action. Whereas that glute, when we just walk, something as common as walking, well, that's an environmental stimulus. That's not even a conscious thing. It just happens in our body, doesn't it? So it's much more working at the unconscious level, and it's a reaction, to our environment. So that glute fires as a result of the environment in which we are in, as a result of gravity and ground reaction force, and something else that's created during gait, which is momentum. So we've got the glute firing as a result of gravity, ground reaction force, and momentum. That's our environment in which we live. That is very difficult to prove with a cadaver on a slab. with electrodes going into tissues, okay? Cannot be proven. So once we go into real life, our bodies actually react very, very differently. And then we go, okay, then, well, what about the thumb turn experiment, which, by the way, I use with clients all the time. So that's not just for like industry folk like us. It's such a great way just to show the connection when you are doing next level stuff with people. Let's say you're going to put them through an appraisal and they have no idea why you're talking about their left hip and their right shoulder being a problem because of their left hip. You can just go, well, let me just show you something to show you how everything is connected, because it might help you understand why I'm really interested in this restriction that you've got here and this pain that you've got elsewhere. And I'm not focusing just on that area of pain. That for me is an absolute classic to use, because people's brains explode when you do that. And it's really great because it's a way of using their body to get them on the same page as you, for them to have some faith in you that you know what you're doing. So for me, that's another real gem just to take away and use. So what does that do? Yeah, it shows that we are a myofascial system as opposed to a muscular system, to show that our environment matters. Tensegrity, I think, unless someone has any questions about tensegrity, I don't think I need to cover it any more than I have in the videos, because you will have seen me do my tensegrity speech a couple of times. The thing that I just really want you to take away from that is that last bit that I talk about in the videos, which is when you tie a knot in one place, when you tie a knot in one place, what happens is the entire organism that we're talking about here has changed shape. It has compensated around that one knot. But every movement a model will make after that, with that knot in place, every shape that it then makes is different. So we have one limited area of a tensegrity system. It changes its shape as a whole thing, as a whole organism, but it changes the shape of, it changes the way it forms shapes in every movement that we then do. And that is powerful. Now, the thing that is kind of moved on in that kind of biotensegrity world, and the thing worth sharing, is that when this concept of tensegrity and then biotensegrity was developed from that, and then we said, okay, then well, all mammals are basically tensegrity systems, biotensegrity systems. It was a great kind of working model to use, but there's more to it than that, because what you got to think is these elastic bands are also filled with fluid, with hydration. So they are actually plumping up, yeah. So the elastic bands, yes, they're elastic, but yes, they're also very, very filled with fluid, they're kind of hydroelastic, not hydroelectric. So they're hydroelastic. Oh, God, I love that term. Someone write that down for me, because I'm going to need to make sure I use that in future, because I don't think I've used that term before, and I love it. So with our little hydroelastics, what we've got is not only is this system that we've got, in other words, our bones, being held in constant tension, and we've got this sense in which we're being pushed outwards as a result of the tensional integrity within that system. But as you can imagine, if these are seen as kind of very elastic filled balloons full of water, they tend to put some pressure on the elastics, to put some pressure pushing you outwards, pushing you apart. And it makes complete sense to me that we would be pushed apart if we are organisms that have to live in gravity, something that's pushing down on us all the time. If our tissues pulled us together, we would be on the floor. We would be dragging our butts along the floor. We need something to go against the forces in which we live, the environment in which we live. In other words, to balance, not go against, but to balance, yeah? So, okay, then we're pushing outwards, gravity is pushing in. Great, there's two things that work really, really well together. we should be pulling in as well as gravity pushing us down. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's where tensegrity is really, really powerful from my point of view. Let's get back here. So our tensegrity systems form actually in the embryo, yeah, in the womb. So you've got these three big elements. Those guys who have done the PH360 training, you will have heard the term mesoderm, ectoderm, and endoderm enough. And most of us have heard of mesomorphs, ectomorphs, and endomorphs. Well, the mesoderm, which is responsible for all muscle and connective tissue, all kind of movement-based stuff. The mesoderm actually has these mesenchymal stem cells that proliferate out of the mesoderm into the ectoderm and endoderm as well, whilst we are actually being formed as embryos. And as you can see, that forms this kind of web or net. And that is the start of the fascial net that we now occupy. Yeah. So it's right there from the very start. It's the thing that is connecting everything, and it's the thing that is holding everything together. We talk about the myofascial system, and in movement, we talk about it a lot of the time as if it's everything. But as I suggested earlier with the talk about hydration and the hydroelastic system, I should say, is that there are other elements that affect movement. So, you know, the skin is still an elastic, you know, it's still elastic, isn't it? It will still actually guide and aid movement. Bone, the integrity of bone will do that. Perineurium, the nerve tissue, is also in there. But what you remember is perineurium is still a form of fascia. Then you've got the pressure from the liquids inside us, hydraulic pressure, blood, and then lymphatic fluid. You know, what is there? 3 times more lymph than there is blood in the system. Like there's a lot of fluids. You know, we're pretty much built of fluids, really. They all create pressure in our system. Not necessarily bad pressure most of the time, enough pressure to deal with all those things that are out there with our environment. Enough pressure to allow space for messages to be transported and things to be carried in the system, for everything to kind of interact with each other. But they are still part of what our movement system is. You know, we can't say, yeah, well, we're moving muscles and connective tissue. That's what movement's all about. Yeah, it is. I agree with you, but you can't then say it's nothing to do with all those other things that I'm listing on the screen here. They're all part and parcel of movement. It's just that we focus in heavily on muscles and connective tissue for this mentorship, and you'll see why as we go through it, because it is a very, very powerful thing. So principle number 1, which outdoes all other principles. Principle number 1 is pretty much the guiding principle of Next Level, is a very simple one. And it's everything is connected to everything. And when I say that, I don't just mean like we've just proven that the left big toe is connected to the right thumb, but actually you've got the 3 dimensions of movement, you know, sagittal, frontal, transverse plane. Yes, that's 3-dimensional, but also what I call the 3 human dimensions, 3HD, which is mental, emotional, and physical. Yeah, everything is connected to everything. We know that bones, muscles, fascia, nerve, skin, and then your digestion, your lymphatic system, the way you think, your stress levels on any particular day, all of those things go into how well you can move on any particular day. So the idea that we're just talking about the myofascial system here, no, we're not. Yes, it is our chief focus, yeah, but actually we're dealing with a whole human with emotions and a soul and this weird underlying energy that none of us can truly explain, but we know it's there guiding us. All of that's included as well as the physical things. You know, if someone's got a poor diet and that affects their gut health, that will affect their movement. It'll affect their thoughts. It'll affect the positivity or negativity in their thoughts, which will then have a flow-on effect into their muscle tissue, which will have a flow-on effect as to whether they feel pain that day. We have to accept all of those things. Our myofascial system is one of our 3 systems of form. In other words, if you took everything else away, we'd still be human being shaped. So circulatory system, take it all away, there's still what's left, all the blood vessels and veins and arteries, that's still human being shaped. The same with our nervous system, it's still human being shaped. And it's the same with our fascial system as well. You take everything else away, we're still human being shaped. But the communication speeds are kind of interesting. Circulatory, every few minutes, we get a complete circulation of that is the speed of the circulatory system, a complete changeover in that blood and reoxygenated blood every few minutes. Neural system, up to 270 kilometers per hour. Fascial system speed is fast, 1100 kilometers per hour. That's the way the fascial system can communicate through the body. It reacts extraordinarily quickly. However, as I put in there, it physically adapts very, very slowly. So you can get change in front of your eyes with people, and this will blow your minds when you start practicing this, is that you will feel and see changes happen on the spot. And I know the ambassadors, educators in the room will be able to give you numerous stories. I've got, around, hundreds, numerous stories where something massive has happened for someone in front of their eyes within a few minutes of doing certain types of movement and interacting with these myofascial lines. And it's because it can react and show you what is possible immediately. But if you want physical change to occur in fascial tissue, there's not a massive blood supply there. So to get a permanent change, for the thing to be embedded, bedded into their system that you've seen happen in front of your eyes with movement, for the physical changes to take place is 6 to 24 months. 6 to 24 months. That's a lot more than instant, isn't it? However, that change can be affected immediately and can be held immediately every time they do their movement program that you've prescribed for them, because you're going to be a next level genius. But in terms of physical change, no, if they stop doing it, no, they haven't made a permanent physical adaptation in the tissues at that point in time. The movement is key. So repetition, just like when you're trying to grow muscle, repetition when you're trying to restore or imbue efficient movement is exactly the same. Repetition counts. So we all are myofascial systems, and we all use our systems differently. Now, the top 2 photos from middle and right on the screen there, they're not clients of mine. Everyone else has been clients. But the top 2 are just to show you 2 different ways of aging, right? That's a choice. That's a decision. Just like I put in a post yesterday on the Next Level group. That's a decision there. You can choose to sit, or you can choose to go out and do other things with your body. But your myofascial system will reflect what you do with your body, with your thoughts, with your emotions, with your diet, with the amount of water you drink, all of those things. But here you've got, top left there that was a group of ladies I put through some, this is shortly after I really learned this stuff. I took this group of older golfers, all ladies, 60 to 80 years old between them. And I put them through 6 weeks, twice a week, of mobility and strength training. And at the start of that 6 weeks, one of them could get really low. The lady second in from the right there. No one else could. And after 6 weeks, they've been doing their mobility work still at home. After 6 weeks, I said, just out of interest, how low can you go, ladies? And they all did that. And it was like, wow, I was astonished. So I quickly ran off and got my phone and said, okay, then do that again. they showed me this again. And to be honest with you, I don't care about whether some of them haven't got great form. The fact that they can occupy those deep positions was just a triumph. And more importantly, they could get back out of them. So it wasn't just a matter of they got down there, but then they needed to book an Uber to get them back out of that position. They were all good. The lady at the bottom there, she in that photo is, I think, 89. She came to me at 87 and was with me for 6 years. She's still around. She's still playing tennis. Just the most amazing lady. But that, again, you apply these techniques, instant change right in front of your eyes. Amazing. The guy is in the center, at the bottom. That's Brady White. He's a professional golfer. And he came to me as an amateur golfer, very, very good amateur golfer. The reason he came to me was because he was in the national program. But he's taken this. He's got an app on his phone to help him with the stuff that we do. He still hits balls once a week barefoot as a result of understanding what the next level is all about. But one of the things that I kind of want to point out is in that photo, he's a right-handed golfer. And you look at his image there and that right shoulder compared to the left shoulder, and that's a problem, right? Except it's not. That's a myofascial adaptation that's been there for 12 years at this point in his career. And do you know what? I'm going to come back to the story. And then Amber on the bottom right there. So she's a pole dance instructor as well as a online business owner. And she came to me because she was competing in state champs and things like that. And her body was constantly breaking down. And again, we did next level stuff with her every week for a year. And in that time, she said it's the only year she's ever had in her whole pole dancing career where she wasn't out with injury at any point. So again, it's just a different way of looking at the body. But with Brady and with that shoulder here, there's kind of an interesting story that relates to that. And I will share stories with you throughout. And I make no apology for sharing the stories with you because it really hits home. Like actual real life stories, they really augment anything that we're doing here. And I think there's more power in the stories than there is sometimes in the actual knowledge. But Brady had this shoulder thing, right? So his shoulder's down here like that, but he's a right-handed golfer. So his hand is naturally going to be down the golf club, right? And over time, that shoulder's repositioned itself over time. The body is very, very clever. Whatever we do a lot of, it will do something. It will make changes in your body so that it can help you, right? So some of that help is not helpful at all after 10 years and you're in extreme back and neck pain, for example. But in Brady's case, it was a myofascial adaptation to a movement pattern that he was doing a lot. Now, at the point in time that we were working together, he was the best in the country at the time as an amateur. He went to number 2 in the world about 2 months in. And then he went to number 1 in the world as an amateur. So he's the best amateur player on earth. And Golf Australia, so the national body, I was working with Golf WA, Western Australia. Golf Australia started dictating a few things that had to happen. And we were pushing back a little bit saying, do you not think he's doing okay? And I had to make some assurances around that we were doing everything right for his body. However, what Golf Australia wanted to do was to have him take a year out to fix his shoulder. Okay, he experienced no pain and he was the best golfer on earth. And in terms of his movement patterns, they were great. And there was no nasties waiting in the background there. We worked together a lot. I checked him a lot. Everything was good. So what they wanted to do was take the best player in the world out, fix his shoulder. So what they meant was we want it looking a bit nicer, a bit more sort of level, you know, a bit more symmetrical, more pleasant to look at, right? And then come back, because they saw his shoulder as a problem, whereas I saw it as an asset. So what happened was they refused funding to the best player in the world. They refused funding for him to go professional. So he went professional anyway, and a year later, Golf Australia got involved and thought, well, we can't have the best guy out there for our country and us not be involved. So they got involved. Now, despite actually poo-pooing our methods, I still had to have a conversation with the CEO of Golf Australia, who had discredited me at that point and said that what I do is irrelevant to a national program. And I had to assure him that that shoulder was great, that it wasn't going to let Brady down, and that if ever there was any kind of discomfort in that area, he actually had things to do with tennis balls and stuff that he could do on the road that would help him. So the big message really there is that if there isn't a problem, don't find one, right? Don't look at something and just because it's aesthetically not pleasing, don't think that there is something wrong with that. And that for me is what is wrong with a static postural assessment, is because we're going on, okay then, but what happens in movement? Because you look at Amber, she's got this massive lordosis when she just stands, okay? But as you can see from that image, she can use her body, it can do anything. It can go into any position without pain. So we can't let our egos get involved and go, oh, it doesn't look quite right. So we're going to work on fixing, in inverted commas, we're going to work on fixing that. Well, actually, is it a problem in the first place? Or in Brady's case, is it an asset? Because if I said to you, hey, what do you think would happen if we fixed Brady's shoulder? Would he still be the #1 golfer in the world? Or would it completely, excuse my French, would it completely fuck up his entire swing? Absolutely, yes, it would. So what they're asking me to do is mess up his entire career. I'm not going to do that because it's against my values and it's completely against what I know to be true from working with 1,000 people. So be aware that you will be in a minority. Be aware that sometimes people won't understand, but also be courageous enough to go, I don't think that that the majority are saying is right for my client or is right for myself. So be aware of that. There will always be those times. So I hope that story was valuable to you, because from my point of view, it's a really powerful one. And Brady is still a professional golfer, FYI. So now I want to take you through a little lesson that I got from Thomas Myers. It does have a point, but it's also quite a lot of fun. So it's like the best combination of both worlds. You've been listening to me for a bit too long now, so it would be silly not to do another activity, right? So we're going to do this. I'll be the words, but your ambassadors, educators in the room will help you along the way as well. Do we have, someone's waving at screen. Do we have a question? Oh, great.
There's a question from Wellington. It's going back a few slides now, but it was about the ectomorph, mesomorph, and the endomorph. The question is, if you have got more muscles, will you have more problems than, say, an ectomorph?
All right, yeah. So in other words, because of, so if you're more mesomorphic and therefore you're more muscular, or you might be, so endomorphs have can be massive people as well. You got to remember, endomorphs will be the strongest people on the planet because of their physical size. So they hold mass easily. So both muscle as well as things like body fat, for example. So there's always an it depends answer from the JP. There will always be an it depends, but here's the background of that. Yes and no. So in other words, if you have a myofascial system, so where you are heavily muscled, but it is there's movement in all directions. It's mobile, it's beautifully hydrated. There's no issues with your, there's not a huge amount of issues with your, nutrition. There's not a huge amount of issues with blockages in your lymphatic system. There aren't a huge amount of issues with your mental state. There aren't a huge amount of issues with your emotional state. Then it doesn't matter whether you're an ectomorph, very slight frame person, whether you're an endo or mesomorph with a very heavy frame, they are the elements that will affect whether you're more likely to have problems or not. The amount of muscle is less relevant. But if we looked at, okay, then when you then get problems, let's say that, across those three main kind of body types, you then get problems, well, there's more to have a problem with. So from that point of view, kind of yes, but really it's all the other stuff. It's that foundation stuff that's the really important part. So yeah, that was a cool question. But for me, and I really like questions, by the way, because they get me thinking, because I've never had that question before. So they get me thinking laterally as well. But for me, no, it's all getting the basics right is the important thing. I mean, if just because you've got more muscle doesn't mean you're more prone to problems in your myofascial system. It's actually what do you feed to your myofascial system? That's the really, really important thing, because I've seen a lot of ectomorphic bodies in my space here who have been in a lot of pain, and it's an irrelevancy really as to how much tissue that they have, how much muscle tissue that they have. Has that kind of answered that question, or is there a follow-up on that? Are we good? All right, we've got another question. So who, I can't quite see who that is, but make sure that it's said close to the microphone so that I can hear you okay.
It wasn't a question, JP, she was just nodding that you'd answered.
Oh, great. All right then. Oh, right, you were putting your hand up to say received. Awesome. Thank you for that. That's good. Obviously, being the first time that we're doing this is good because we're getting a little bit of code system going on. So by day 3, I'll know all the different kind of movements. It'd be like like auctioneers. I'll know that a stroke of your left ear means that I need the bathroom, and that hand up means thanks for the question. I know that this means that I'm really frustrated because you haven't answered yet. There'd be all sorts of kind of cool things that we can do there. Let's get back to that slide. The ecto, meso, and endomorphic stuff is kind of interesting. It definitely has added a little bit to the mix for my understanding. But in terms of when we do this stuff, it spans across all systems. Yes, some might act slightly differently, but overall, it's applicable to all types of morph and all mixtures of morph as well. So we're going to do this. We're going to do this little exercise now, and I would pick a different partner to who you had before. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to sit down in front of your partner so that you're pretty much cross-legged and quite close, kind of like just a few inches in between you like this, so that you're facing your partner. And you might as well get in position. We might as well do this together. I'm a little bit like, I'm a very lonely soul at the moment. I have got someone to come and help me when it comes to appraisal, but for the moment, I'm I'm a lonely, sad ass soul. So here we are. And what you're going to do is you are going to put your, I know this is post-COVID, so this is great to be able to do. You're going to put your palms of your hands against each other's palms. And you are going to pick who is the lead partner. And that partner is going to move their hands around, and all your your other partner is going to do is they're going to try, I'm going to come closer to the screen again. They're going to try to keep up with you as you move your hands around. That's all you've got to do is try to keep up. But here's the thing. Do it with your eyes open. And then after about 10 seconds, close your eyes. Go.
How's that? Got cold hands always. Everyone does it this way. Want to be the leader? I'll follow you. That's good. Good movement. Oh yeah. All right. You do what works for you. Oh, good. That's a good movement. Yeah.
Okay, team, I'm loving that.
Oh, nice.
So here's what you're going to do next.
Oh, done. Oh, done.
Now what I'm going to have you do is you're going to be in front of each other, but there's going to be a gap in between your hands. So you're going to have at least 3 centimeter gap between your hands. Now the other person is the leader, but the person on the, no, we'll keep it like this first. So the other person is the leader now. You're going to do the same thing, but your partner has to keep up with you. But at no point do your hands touch. You have to stay as close as possible. But you've got to try and move your hand around. And you're going to start slowly because you like your partner at this point in time. But at some point, you might want to speed up. I can see Kirsty Watt from here already planning her victory. So at some point, you're going to speed up a little bit and see how good your partner is at keeping up with you, watching your hands kind of move around like that. Are you ready? Go.
You ready to go?
Now swap leader. Now the other person is the leader.
So I can do the opposite from you.
Okay, time. Here's what we're going to do next. Let me just spotlight. There we go. That's me. So now what you're going to do is you're going to have that gap in between your hands. One person is going to be the leader and they will have their eyes open. The other person will be the follower. They will have their eyes closed. The leader's job is to describe where they need to move their hand to keep up with your own hands. So it's going to be one of those kind of things where you're going to go up towards your left diagonally, stop, straight down, right hand straight down, stop, left hand out, all that kind of stuff. You're both going to have a go at this, but as you start, pick who the leader is. The leader has their eyes open, follower has their eyes closed. Away you go.
job. Out wide, out wide. And stop. And make it wiggle. Which way? Out further and then back around. Yeah, so yeah, good stuff. And walk way back. Right hand. And outwards. Yep, good. Up to the sky. Good. And diagonal down to your opposite hip. Back against the middle. Back against the start. Jump. Both hands. Up and down. Down to the right. Oh, yep, good. Yep. Up and down. Up and down. Both hands up and down. All right. And now we're going to do old chair.
Okay, team, swap partner. So now you're going to swap leader. The other person is now the leader. So you can feel what they've just been going through. Okay, change leader. Away you go.
Did I go to the start? Or did my whole arm? Yep.
Okay, time. Well done, team.
Oh, well done, that was hard.
So there's a little bit of a few things going on there. And the point of doing that is obviously we're interested in different learning styles, but really also there's something else going on. So what was the easiest in order to keep up with those movements? What was the very easiest way of doing that? It was skin on skin, wasn't it? It was kinesthetic. Was everyone, hopefully, I'm just to assume you're agreeing with me. So it's skin on skin, right? So, because we can feel that, and it's very easy to react, even though even when you close your eyes, you could still keep up with that. And then visually, doable. But then once you get to auditory, you have to be pretty damn clear with your auditory instruction, don't you, in order for that to work really well. And certainly you're not going to go at the same speed and efficiency from that point of view. But really the point that we want to make here is, just like we've been doing up to this point in time, is that the most powerful thing that we can do for our clients is to have them feel something. But also, the number of words that you use to describe something has to be minimal. Because if you use too many words, you're going to actually start getting confused. Now, we have some amazing audio cueing people in both rooms today. So I'm not in any way suggesting that audio learners, are all wrong and they should only do kinesthetic. But the point of today is that this stuff that we're doing, the way that you guys are going to take away this education is in your bodies, not necessarily just in your minds, because you will feel what happens as a result of what we're doing from a knowledge point of view. We are going to have a break in just a second, by the way, so stay with me for about one or two more minutes. So if we can actually have people physically feel what we're talking about, then they are going to buy in to their own improvement, their own growth, their own change, whatever it might be that they're looking for from you. Visual and auditory are very, very important. But if they feel nothing, if they don't feel what you're seeing, if they don't hear what you're saying, then we're not going to have someone who is going to experience the kind of change that we are hoping for. So at this point, I know we've got a cool thing to do after this, which is we're going to do some warding. but I want to come back to warding afterwards, which is a very kinesthetic experience. I just have a 15-minute break. Go do whatever you need to do, and I will reconvene at 45 minutes past the hour. So what would that be? 1:45 your time? 1:45 your time. If the ambassadors have any messages to communicate, obviously come over and talk to me right now. But otherwise, you guys take a break. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you again soon. Do we have any questions from the first bit of the teaching today? Any questions from that section, or are we all good? You don't really care as long as you had a good snack and something to drink. So Pablo is particularly happy. So that's really good. I always think when people start air humping that it's a really good sign that they're having good fun. No questions? This is where I missed out, you see, because on the next level, we have a cool selection of snacks available, and then there's the cool company of you guys. I've been lucky enough to spend the last 15 minutes just on my own, but I now have company to help me on the next section of the mentorship, so I'm not fully alone anymore. I'll introduce you in just a second. Let me get back to my screen and make sure there's nothing that I have missed really. So we are going to do some warding. The images are quite cool for the warding stuff. So I want to take you through this because there's another technique you should take away, and it's a very kind of kinesthetic it's a very kinesthetic technique. It's very much worth taking away. As you can see, warding is basically guarding or protecting your space. That's what the kind of dictionary definition is. But it's actually from an exercise perspective, from a movement perspective, they actually say that it's maintaining body-wide tension whilst performing a global movement pattern, maintaining body-wide tension whilst performing a global movement pattern. So pretty full on. The picture that I like the best, and given that I am broadcasting with New Zealand right now, it's the Jonah picture, like Jonah Lomu on the bottom right there. That for me is the ultimate ward. So he is going very fast in one direction, whilst 100 kilos of Scottish is coming at him from another direction. But at no point, let me just stop the share here actually. At no point is he taking himself that way in reaction to this 100 kilos traveling at speed laterally towards him, or has he leant in? He has held that guy at arm's length while staying fully maintaining an upright posture and running in that direction. That's the ultimate ward, because what you'll feel in just a second is a mild version of what was happening in Jonah Lomu's system in his full core, which is basically everything between your toes and your fingertips. What was happening through his core in order to be able to hold that person at bay. I want to do a little practical session with you guys now, because this mentorship is so very practical. This is the whole point of us meeting as a group. And I want to take you through some warding if you haven't done it before. If you have, then you're going to get to enjoy it all again. We're going to start from the absolute basics, because like I say, we've had people join more recently to the two groups, and I'm really keen that everyone goes through everything and everyone kind of can absorb everything. So for some of you, it might be the first time you've done warding. Some forms of anti-rotation exercise, FYI, are very much warding. But in this case, we're actually going to use other human beings as our warding partners. So I'll start you off by, let me just change position here. Now, some of you have met online this lady who's going to step forward now, Beck. This is Beck, who's in Perth. And some of you have met Beck online, but probably only Corinne has met in person. So Beck's done next level movement, next level integrative. She's doing next level advanced. She is seriously next level. She happens to be in Perth, which is very, very useful for me because then I can go, hey, could you spend a couple of hours with me on Friday? Because I want to kind of show these guys this stuff. So Beck's agreed to come and do that for us now. So thank you to Beck for joining us. I want to show you the starting point for warding so you can start to feel what's going on. Now, the cueing is that you maintain a long, tall spine throughout and soft knees. Those two elements are really important. At no point, a ward isn't a lean, okay? You will want to lean at some point. A ward is nice, tall, upright posture. You're on your 2 feet and you are taking the force into your system and activating accordingly. It is awesome, by the way, if you want to do core training and have no equipment other than people's bodies. So we're going to just start you off so you can get a feel for it, but I might back away a little bit more. If I can get you to stand there for me, Beck. So I'm just going to get you to do that for me, okay? Now, Beck's gone at arm's length because I know she's fine with that, but actually we can regress that just by her having her elbows bent as well. But Beck, I know, is fit enough to be able to do this. So I'm going to go arm's length, and I'm going to put my hands on the outside of her hands. We're going to make sure we've both got soft knees. We're both nice tall in the spine. Beck is going to pull, we're going to do it at 2 angles so you can see. Beck is going to push towards my hands. I'm going to actually resist the force that she's putting into me. Go Beck, 1, 2, 3, switch sides. 1, 2, 3, switch sides. 1, 2, 3, switch sides. Keep going while I talk. So this looks, all we're doing is we're standing still, aren't we? Okay, and Beck, if I get you to stand kind of diagonally, kind of there.
Yeah.
All right, so, and go. All right, so it kind of looks like all we're doing is we're joining hands and smiling and nothing's really happening, all right? You guys are gonna do that now. So I want you guys to team up, preferably with someone you haven't teamed up with before. Auckland, I realize you're going to run out of options after this one. You're going to have to go with someone that you already know. So team up, please. Wellington, off your bums and actually start moving. It's a movement mentorship. I just a little reminder. And you can go as long with the arms or as short with the arms as you wish. Remember, you're on your 2 feet. Knees are bent, tall spine, lateral force into the other person, round about a 3 count, swap sides, lateral force. You decide how much force you put into that person. If they fail to cope with the force, then you've found your natural equilibrium as to how much force is required. So get used to that first of all.
She's moving, but he's not.
Thanks. Corinne, if you can unmute as well, that'd be great.
I was trying to turn you around so you could see Pablo and Karina.
That's a lot better. That angle that was just there, that's a lot better for all the practicals because I've been only seeing the edge of the practicals. So that's great, Wellington. Really, really good. Okay, team. I'm going to give you a couple of my little favorites that I really like because it kind of connects people to traditional exercise, but it has a very similar effect through our core. But hopefully, if you want to put a thumb up to the screen, could you feel some stuff happening nice inside your bodies, in your core? Yeah, great. All right. So I like to do this kind of bicep curl, tricep push down looking thing. So Beck's going to be like this, like she's holding a tray. And then I'll put my hands along her forearms like that. We get nice and tall, but bend our knees slightly. I'm going to put some downward pressure. She's got to resist. 1, 2, 3. And then we can switch on 1, 2, 3. So again, what I'm not doing is I'm not leaning onto Beck, because obviously that would be very unfair, putting my body weight onto Beck. We're just actually holding the force and resisting each other. Okay, do a few of those, see how they feel. So for this one, I would suggest bent elbows. And make sure there's no leaning, there's no kind of putting body weight on. It's all got to come from your own strength to generate force. All right, nice one, everyone. Eyes back on camera. So you're feeling some stuff happening in your system. I have all sorts of jokes, by the way, that I normally like to do when I'm in the room. They're probably not going to work through a screen as well, but quite often I'll be saying, like, Beck might be here and I'll be here, and we'll be doing this kind of thing, and I'll say to that person, who quite often is unknown to me, they don't really know me that well, and I'll go, you see, you thought you were irresistible, didn't you? And that normally makes them feel sufficiently uncomfortable in my presence for me to find that amusing. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to test you on one foot. What does that mean? We're going to have to get all the way over here, I think, Beck. Right. So we're going to go back to that initial arm position. We're going to actually maintain pressure, and then one of you is going to take a step back. So all the weight has to be stabilized through that one foot and a step back. And you'll find that one side is probably a bit more efficient than the other. But that whole time, if you're the partner that's being warded, as you know, as in the stationary partner, what I want you to do is go, okay, then when are they actually losing force? When do they lose force? When the left foot's back or when the right foot's back? And you can actually coach them and say, hey, no, I want a bit more when your right foot's back. Okay, so do that on each side, and then swap and test the other partner. Away you go, team. If you haven't swapped and you're not testing the opposite partner yet, make sure you swap over and test the other partner.
I'll go start with my are we allowed to do that? Yeah. Yeah, you have to move the hip down.
Okay, team. Eyes back on the screen now. We're going to do a kind of more dynamic one now. That involves one of you hunkering down and being like the target, and the other one being quite dynamic, but you've still got to make sure you keep that tall, upright spine with that movement. So we're just going to, so Beck is going to be basically, I think, I'm going to get you kind of like there. So what you do is you'll see me, this is where my hands are, like this, okay? I better just spotlight this so you actually see this okay. Let me just do that. All right, I'm very selfishly spotlighting myself here. So I'm gonna take a big step in, stay upright in my spine, and then apply some pressure to the outside of Beck's hip, and I'm gonna come back in, okay? So this is the ward. It's there, 1, 2, come back. 1, 2, come back. 1, 2, come back. And go down. Oh, it feels weird on this side. Wow. I can see why I picked that side first. Okay, so this is where you're bringing in a movement plus the ward. But the beautiful thing is that Beck is still getting a ward. She's still having to stabilize her whole body, even though it looks like she's passive in this. She's still active in this, and I'm obviously got more activity. But what I'm interested in, if you do 5 each side and then swap, note heart rate and breath rate on this one, because it is quite surprisingly different. Over to you. Okay, team, you're looking good there. Loving the energy, loving the noises, by the way, from each room. That's really cool too. So there are, you know, I could easily teach 2 to 3 hours on warding alone with all the different nuances that we can do, because obviously the next stage along is actually to do gait patterns, different movement patterns whilst holding a ward. You can imagine kind of just trying to hold tension whilst you're kind of working through grapevine patterns and things like that. You can make them very dynamic. What I did want to leave you with warding, though, was actually it's more of a game than anything. So when you start off, sometimes a nice way to connect people in a group, like this is classic for like group training or boot camps, for example, a way to kind of connect people is just by getting them facing each other and warding each other. So for example, if Beck comes forward, I think we'll go diagonal on this one, Beck. And again, we're tall in the spine, knees are bent. And it might just be that we'll start off, and what I'm going to try and do is get Beck off balance one way or the other by warding at the shoulder or warding at the hip. And in fact, if her arms are down by her side like that, even then, it's not like too intimate. I don't have to kind of touching thighs or anything like that. So what I'm trying to do is get her off balance. And as you can see, she's done this before, because it doesn't matter how big and incredibly muscular and butch like I am. It doesn't matter, right? Because this person is very solid and stable and connected in her system. So you can do that, and then you can swap places. But what's sometimes fun to do is actually do it as a game. So it's more like a core war type game where you're both here, both sets of arms are in play. You have to stay tall though, you're not leaning onto them, and you've got hip and shoulder as a game to go for. So it's the core game. Are you ready? Go. So what you're trying to do is actually get your client or your partner off balance. Now, here's the thing, as long as it's lateral pushes, because here's the thing that's completely unfair. You can't do that, all right? Because they're gone, and it's very, very dangerous. It's all lateral warding patterns, okay? Lateral actions. Go away and play that one and tell me how you get on there. Some interesting grunts coming through.
Okay, ready? We're both ready to go. What hand are you going to go first? You go right, I go right.
That's it. Let's see the free-for-all. Absolute free-for-all. It's just knocking Karina over. Okay, team. That looked like a lot of fun. Of particular note, of course, was I'm hearing a lot of laughter in my ears, which is brilliant. And then what I did see was I would liken it to seeing a cat swipe a mouse or something like that with Pablo and Karina in Wellington there. That was quite amusing. He just went bomb, and you saw Karina just go that way. So you can get mismatches in strength, but they're not always to do with size. So I remember one time me and Corinne, and she's considerably smaller than me, but I just can't move that chick. It was just a weird experience. And even my brain couldn't process it at the time, because I'm like, no, well, this isn't happening because I'm 35 kilos heavier than this woman. So she's obviously going to be, I'm just going to bat her around. No, it's not how it works. So no one wrestle with Corinne unless you're prepared to have a challenge. So it's all about how well you are connected, literally from your toes to your fingertips, through this whole kind of core line. But actually, if we spin around, it's this, isn't it? It's all this. You can see how connected all of this is, this deep front line. Very, very powerful to be strong and stable in. But what I love about that is there's a number of things. Number one, you can't ward someone without being warded in return. So that's a really, really important kind of part of this. So I feel like it's, you know, it's like a hug, isn't it? You can't kind of give one without receiving one as well. Number two is that Pablo and Karina were an example of this. You can't produce more force than you can stabilize, okay? So this is a very powerful message from warding. You can't produce more force than you can stabilize. So what does that mean? Well, if you are on your 2 feet with a tall spine and you're trying to generate force, it's the strength of your entire system that generates the force, okay? So if you want to generate more, the only way to generate more is to get stronger over time. When we are isolated, you know, we are put into machines, or, you know, we sit on a weight bench, whatever it might be, when we add other things in like that, it means that we can get strong in a less balanced way. So throughout our system, you know, and we will have seen this, we will have seen big guys with massive chests and small legs. You know, we get strong in an unbalanced way. So when you are like that, and when you are doing that form of exercise only, you are more prone to injuring, because there's going to be this weird imbalance. When you come to do an integrated exercise, a whole body type exercise, suddenly there's this massive imbalance and you can easily hurt yourself. Warding is about as safe as it gets, because, as I said twice already, you can't produce more force than you can stabilize. So if you can't produce that amount of force, you can't hurt yourself. So if you think of, you know, working with, you know, new mums, for example, warding's amazing for new mums, isn't it? Because they can't actually overexert themselves through their course, for example, can they? Because you can only produce as much force as you can stabilize. They can't stabilize that force. In the same way that, you know, if Pablo gives a really strong ward to Karina, she can't produce more force than that. So her body capitulates. That's a safety mechanism right there for Karina, right? Because if she was trying to stabilize against that, ow, something's gonna hurt. So much better and much funnier if she goes sideways than if she gets injured, okay? So it's a very powerful technique, and there are all sorts of incarnations of that. If you're in the VIP group, the next level VIP group, there's a session on warding in there as well. You can, honestly, we could go for hours on this stuff, but for me, it's just another little kind of gift that I wanted to give you guys to take away, because it's so very powerful and so useful. And you can take it anywhere with you, right? Because all you need is a human body. Can you do that without? Yeah, you can. It's kind of nowhere near as much fun. And what I mean by that is that we can use a wall, can't we? So I could actually ward this wall right here and go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We can ward any fairly solid object, yeah, not just human beings, but it's just a lot more fun and a lot more connecting if we actually have human beings in the mix. Now, the next section used to be a massive teaching zone for me, and now, because of the pre-learning, far less so. So we've done that. I've already given you the story of Brady. You can see his shoulder a little bit better in there now. And then if ever you have to have like a single paragraph to describe what fascia is, then this is the one I tend to go with for people. And it's from Helene Langevin, who's a French researcher. She did the strolling under the skin thing. It joins your thigh to your calf, your hand to your arm, your breastbone to your clavicle. As you move, it allows your muscles to glide past one another. It acts like a net suspending your organs and a high-tech adhesive holding your cells in place whilst relaying messages between them. Connective tissue is one of the most integral components of the human machine. Indeed, one could draw a line between any 2 points of the body via a path of connective tissue. This network is so extensive and ubiquitous that if we were to lose every organ, muscle, bone, nerve, and blood vessel in our bodies, we would still maintain the same shape, our connective tissue body. Mic drop. That for me is a really beautiful way of getting across when people say, "What? I have no idea what even you're talking about." If they want to know more, that would be a great quote to send them. The three major joint complexes of the body, quick reminder, of course, they are very, very important. Of course, they are meant to move. If they don't move, we tend to see problems in people. So our thoracic spine is our thorax, our entire rib cage. It's not just the bit looking at someone's back. It's our entire thorax. That's our thoracic spine. There should be movement. We should be able to move and groove through there. The nature of today's society is such that most people tend not to move well through their thoracic. I actually am one of those people. Despite all the work that I've done so far, my thoracic spine still doesn't work as well as I would love it to. And where it shows up the most is in one of the things that I love to do the most, which is animal flow. There are things that my thoracic spine prevents my hips from doing that frustrates me. So the work that I've got to do to get my hips working beautifully in animal flow, not in upright posture where they work really, really well, but in animal flow, is to actually work on my thoracic for my hips to improve their function. Isn't that interesting? So then you've got this whole hip complex, the pelvis again. This is the pelvis. It's all the way around, okay? People say, oh, it's the ankle, the hips, and the thoracic spine. Well, the hips are kind of considered like there, aren't they? No, it's the entire area, which is the pelvis for the hips. If this doesn't move well, then we tend to get problems above and below. There was a very cool analogy with the lumbar spine and the pelvis that I've heard along the way. I think it was Michelle that actually told me this. So the 5 lumbar vertebrae added together produce 15 degrees of rotation. So all added together, a total of 15 degrees of rotation. That's not very much. So the lumbar spine isn't made to rotate a huge amount. But immediately below it, we've got this pelvis. And a really beautifully functioning pelvis is capable of 120 degrees of rotation. Now you compare those two figures and you go, okay then, so in life, where are we meant to rotate from? What is meant to be working really, really efficiently? It's a pelvis, isn't it? Our lumbar spine takes a hit and is overworked and overused so much, mainly because of sitting culture, but from a whole heap of other things as well in terms of diet, hydration, all those other things that I listed earlier. And then the foot ankle is our other complex that should work really well. All of these should be stable as well as mobile, but the mobility should come from there. But if you get problems in knees, low backs, neck and shoulder, they're really, really common. I'm sure everyone's kind of seen those. It's hardly ever that I find a knee problem in the knee. It's hardly ever that I find a low back problem in the low back. It's hardly ever that I find a shoulder problem or a neck problem that has a source that's in the shoulder or the neck. What else have I got for you? So really we need to really focus on where do the myofascial lines intersect those major joints in the body. We have gone through these at length, I think, in a couple of the lectures that we've already done. So I'm just literally going to say what they are now, rather than go through them all with you again. If you are in any doubt on anything, please make sure that you get a question in to the educators in the room with you now, and make sure that question comes through to me right now, because I would love to hear them and augment any of the knowledge that you need right now. But it's really, really important that you're familiar with this tissue. But do you need to know that, for example, the superficial front line starts with the toe extensors? Well, it's up to you. You just need to know that it starts on the top of the feet. Do you see what I mean? Like there's way too much overcomplication of life with wording and, you know, this need for, you know, scientific terms. Just know that it starts on the top of the feet and it travels up the front of the leg. You know, at this point, that's all you need to know. And then it starts at the pelvis and goes up the front of your body. Once you're kind of getting used to it and you get, you know, you might want to buy some posters like this from Anatomy Trains Australia, New Zealand, or terrarosa.com.au. You can get those off me another time. But you might want one of these so you can actually look at that and go, okay, then, yeah, when we get to the lateral line, it does start at the base of the first and fifth metatarsal and goes into the perineals and attaches to the fibular head and then becomes the IT band. And you might want to get, you know, slick with the actual internal external obliques, how it crisscrosses up through there and ends up on the side of the head with the sternocleidomastoid. You might want to get that. You might like doing that, in fact. But for me, I just need to know that it travels up the side of the body, and then where it touches down at those different points, like, you know, what happens at the ankle, what happens at the hips, what happens at the thoracic spine with those, because if they're not working efficiently there, then that's a point of interest. The deep front line, if you were to, oh, I should just reverse up just for a second. So Julie Hammond, I've been lucky enough to work with the head of Anatomy Trains Australia, New Zealand. I did a one-day workshop, collaborated with her on a one-day workshop about 4 years back. And one of the things that I loved that I picked up from her teaching was that she gives each line a character name. So the superficial front line, she called it the line of bravery. So for her, the way she describes the line is, if they are working in their optimal way, this is how you would present. So if I just spin around again, if your superficial front line is healthy and happy, you present brave. In other words, you are tall and you are open. Yeah. So your posture is brave. But if it is limited for whatever reason, whether that be physical, mental, or emotional, you're here, aren't you? You're being pulled down. This is being restricted or shortened in some way. This isn't a brave posture. Yeah. If it's working well, you are brave. Yeah. The superficial back line, she calls the line of strength. Because remember, we're forward-facing beings, aren't we? So we're a forward-facing species. So we're constantly moving forward there. So from that point of view, then I'm just going to do some muting because I'm hearing a lot of noise in the background. I'll just carry on. I'll get you to unmute in a little while. So the back line is all about actually holding you. It's literally kind of guiding you, going, it's okay, I've got you. It's okay, I've got you. It's okay, I've got you. My obvious myofascial line joke here, because they are, I tell you what, they are a niche. They're a niche area in the world of anything to have a myofascial line joke, and mine are all dad jokes. So I do apologize. I should probably have apologized at the start just to say, hey, look, it's okay. We're going to have a laugh. It's okay to have a laugh. I'm sometimes deeply inappropriate. I do apologize for that if I'm going to upset anyone over the next few days, but I have warned you now. This is more offensive, not in the inappropriate way, but just in a really dad joke kind of way. So there's your superficial back line. And it's going, it's okay, we've got you. It's okay, we've got you. It's your superficial back line. The superficial back line is literally got your back. You see, it's right. Okay, moving on. That works about that well every time I do it. So your lateral line, getting back to some really cool shit from Julie Hammond. Okay, then you don't like my stuff, that's fine. So your lateral lines, okay, come up the side of your body, of course. What does she call those? Well, she calls those the lines of space. So the line of space, because as you can imagine, you've got an elastic band that comes up the side through here. What that does is, if there is no limitations in that, you are tall, okay? Whereas if there are limitations in that, you are literally being compressed into yourself, aren't you? Can you imagine it just being pulled down on both sides? You are being compressed into yourself. All the joints of the body are being compressed. So the lateral line is the line of space. And I really love that about that. And then finally, the deep front line. I don't say this to clients because I think they would find it all kind of weirdly intimidating, but she calls it the truth. or the real you? And that for me is where a whole heap of things can be found in this tissue through here, which is much more from that mental and emotional world that people occupy. These are the lines: post-mentorship education. These are the lines we will cover in that. You'll be able to immediately deal with about 80% of issues that walk through your door just from doing the 4 lines that I've just outlined there. Amber, we have talked about earlier too. I've already given you that story. But yeah, as you can see, her body seems to work pretty damn well, doesn't it? I have never been able to grab hold of an upright, invert, and do the splits. So I don't know if anyone there has, but it's not something that I do on a daily. But her body seems to work pretty well. So she kind of gets away with her lumbar lordosis, doesn't she? It's time for the keys to the kingdom to be handed to you, my lovely people. This is what never appears anywhere but in the movement mentorship, okay? This will look very simple, but it's very, very detailed and smart behind the scenes. Before I launch into this, are there any questions? If there are questions, make sure you do unmute before you ask them. Just want to make sure the room's happy before we get into this. Okay. Here's the way it's going to work. Because I want this to be done better than we've ever done it before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a run through. So I'm literally going to go through. Beck's going to be my client. I'm just going to do an appraisal with Beck. I'm not going to teach any of it to you guys. I'm just going to get you to watch. You'll hear, hopefully you'll hear what Beck says as well as what I say through my microphone, which is in my ear. I'm just going to run through it. All I want you to do is observe. Just let it wash over you. Yeah. Then we're going to break down each stage of that and make sure that you kind of grasp each stage and why we do it in the first place. So that's the next stage. So you are very much trying to watch, and then on the second part, absorb as much as you can. Then stage 3 is you guys are actually going to do the appraisal on each other. It's like you are doing it. You are already next level appraising today. What I wondered, ambassador educators, is whether we should actually, after I've done the run through, so I'm just giving you a heads up, after I've done the run through with Beck, have the forms handy and give those out after I've done the run through. So then when we break it down, they've actually got the form to follow as well as me kind of breaking it all down for you guys. If, when I do the breakdown, educators, there's anything you feel needs adding, make sure you add it and you add it on mic so both rooms hear it, because believe it or not, I'm not perfect. And I know, don't get me wrong, I know you're all surprised at the moment because it surprises me sometimes too. But sometimes I don't teach every nuance of everything. But this is why I've got 4 geniuses working with me, because they will fill in any gaps for each of the rooms that we're doing there. Everyone is happy to go ahead and watch this appraisal now. Yeah, we're good? All right then. Welcome everyone. This is exciting, always exciting for me because I'm sharing something that I created so that anyone could do it. This is, I'm just going to check how the screen's looking. Make sure you get me head to toe there. That's good. So we're about to go through that. Like I say, this is a creation so that anyone can do this. What I found with a whole heap of appraisals and assessments is that they were expecting people to see the same thing that they saw, okay? And not everyone sees everything, and not everyone is very accomplished at observation. So I've kind of gradually worked it so that by the time you get to step 4 of the 4-step appraisal, step 4 will reveal a whole heap without you having to be some kind of genius observer. When I was taught it, I was taught looking at a human being by watching someone walk, and I saw nothing of what my instructor was seeing. So very important that we have a system that anyone can do and anyone can understand. I've taught this to people who don't work in the industry, and they yield some really great information. So this is my system that has simplified things so that you can yield powerful information without having to be a genius from day one. Okay, you will see more the more you do it, of course. So I'm going to take Beck through this now, and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make a few notes along the way on the board. You have forms to follow, which is there to help you. I'm kind of at the point after 11 years where I just make a few little notes on a whiteboard now, and I just note what I need to remember. I don't know all the other stuff. So that's what you'll see me doing along the way. And I'm happy to show you the board that I've got afterwards. Other than that, I'm going to get going. I'll see you in about 15 minutes, all right? Hello, Beck, who I don't really know that well. I've only met once before. I just want to take you through an appraisal, and what I'll do is it's going to be moving the whole time. There's one element where I just need to check your hips, but we're going to be moving the whole time. I want you to be as honest as you can possibly be with me, because it's going to be weird, because you're going to be walking and I'm not always going to be walking with you, and I'm going to be observing. It's going to be a kind of a weird situation. But I just want you to tell me what you're feeling when I say what are you feeling. It might not necessarily be obvious, so I'm going to coach you a little bit with that to help you with that. But it's an odd situation to be in. I get it, but we're just going to go through that. I'm going to have you walking across the room with me first of all, because it's actually better for camera. And then we will have you walking towards the camera as well as we go. So step one today is actually walking, and you're going to tell me how it feels. Most people go, I don't understand what you mean. So I will walk with you. So come over here. Let's walk across the room. And all I'm going to get you to do is, as you're walking your normal walk, because also what the other thing is that happens is everyone wants to slow down and kind of think. So they're all kind of, oh, what am I thinking? It's just like from the ground up, what do you feel? So for me, you know, just to give you an example, I'm kind of aware. If I actually tune in and go, what's happening at the feet? I'm going to go, actually, I'm going a bit heavy on my right foot at the moment. If I really tune into that, which means that if I think about my legs, my right leg is activating more as well. So I feel kind of relaxed on the left. And I wasn't aware of that before because I've tuned in. You know, I'm aware that I can feel my glutes firing because we did a little thing earlier about glutes. So I'm aware of that. I'm aware that my right neck compared to my left neck, my right neck feels kind of uncomfortable a little bit as I'm walking as well. So there's a few little things like that that's going on. So what I want you to do is now I'm going to get you to walk up and down towards the camera, and I'm going to get you to kind of give me some feedback on what you feel when you are walking, okay?
I feel like I'm rolling in on my left.
Rolling in on your left, yeah.
Feel a bit stuck around my right ribcage.
Okay. A little bit stuck around the right rib cage, yeah.
Feel I have more movement through my left glute.
So that was movement through the left, more movement through the left glute.
Yes. My right leg feels tighter down lateral.
Cool. So you're probably gathering, everyone who's listening, like a lot of people won't give you this detail in their appraisal. Beck's kind of used to kind of tuning into herself. What about your shoulders? Do you feel anything through your shoulders?
My left shoulder feels like it's forward of my right shoulder.
Yeah, left shoulder forward of right. And is this your normal walk?
Yep.
Yeah, I just like to check that along the way. So do you have any aches and pains right now?
No.
No, all right. Do you have a go-to movement that you would do just to check in with your body, like a whole body movement? So for me, if I sit my bum down and reach forward, that's a classic way of going, okay, then what? I can kind of tune into my ankles and tune into my hips a little bit and go, what's going on for me there? So would that be an okay movement for me to do?
Yeah.
If we do that, can you go slow on the first one?
Mhm.
Tell me the first point of pull anywhere in your body when you do it. So you kind of go down and you think, oh yeah, I can feel it. It doesn't mean that you can't go all the way to the floor, because I know you can. But just when is that very first point of pull?
Probably now it's kind of outside my knees.
That's pretty good range, mate. And then come back up again and do a couple more just in your own time now. Just kind of tell me what you're feeling. Same kind of thing as you're walking, you know, it's like, let me just tune in.
Bit of a pull on my left thigh when I get down low.
Yeah.
My weight doesn't feel even. Feels like I'm loading more through my left foot.
Yeah, so you've got a left pull inner thigh and like you're loading left side more, yeah?
Mhm.
Anything else popping up for you?
Not really.
No? Okay. What I want to do now is check whether your pelvis is relatively level or not.
Mhm.
So the way we do that is just going to get you to put your feet fairly close together,
Mhm.
and you're just going to stand tall.
Mhm.
My hands are going to go on top of your pelvis. I have to dig in relatively firmly to make sure that I'm right. So I'm sorry if it tickles or something like that. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to get my eyes at the same level so that I can actually see. And we have got the right slightly low today, which I don't know if that's usual for you, but that's so right hip low. Cool. Okay. Now I want to put you through 4 movements that's going to just reveal everything about you. Okay. So, you know, what you like to do as a child, not really, no. So I'm going to get you to, and we're going to do them in no particular order, but I like to start by getting people to kind of take their feet nice and wide apart and soften one knee. So let's say you're softening your right knee. You're going to stay tall through your body. And I want you to get your pelvis like it's actually tilting. So if I do that movement, that's just my upper body movement. I'm going to actually get you. And if you need to get help from your hand, you're going to actually sink towards the straight knee and then come back. And what do you feel as you're doing that?
I feel pull on the inner.
Pull on the inner left, and we've got that, the left knee is straight.
And it feels stuck here, like where I'm trying to hinge. It feels really stuck.
So it feels stuck on the outside, and you feel the pull lengthening type pull on that side. Cool. Do a couple more for me.
The part that's sticky feels, it's more overwhelming feeling than what's going on there.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay then. So
Doesn't get better now.
feels better already. Okay. All right. And what we're going to do is, so that I'm just going to turn you with this orientation to the camera to do the other side. I think facing the camera, and now do the other side. So we're actually testing the right side here. We're testing the straight leg side.
I haven't even got into position and it's pulling through here.
On the outside more than the inside?
Sort of in between the front and the side.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So you're struggling there. And the pull on the inside is what?
There's nothing on the inside, it's all here.
Yeah. So it's much more of a bunching up feeling in there, right?
Yeah. And now I'm starting to get a little bit on the inside, inner thigh. But it's more in that, in between the front and the lateral hip.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So what I'm going to have you do next is I'll get you to take a couple of steps back. I'm going to actually get you to bring your feet fairly close together, knees slightly bent. You're going to drive from the hip, but keep tall in the spine and bring your arm in and just see how far that hip is happy to go. And then just tell me what you feel as you're doing that. What are you feeling?
There's a bit of a pull towards the posterior.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all that's stopping me.
Okay. On the other side.
Oh, it's really tight through here. Stuck.
So right side is really.
I purposely didn't move this morning.
No, and that's good. And what I'm seeing also is your hips want to kind of spin out a little bit. So if I keep you strict there as well, it's even more Yeah, so
Yeah.
that right lateral is really cool.
That's stuck. And a little bit at the front as well. The front of my hip too.
So you got a bit in the front and a lot at the side, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Next up, I'm going to actually just check what's going on through that kind of back line. So I'm actually going to get you doing something that looks a lot like the good morning exercise that people do. So it's tall spine. Now you're not locking out your knees, but they are quite straight. So they're soft knees, but they're still, and you're going to just tip from the hips like so.
Mm-hmm.
See how far you can go and tell me what stops you.
Okay. Hamstrings.
Good range, but it's hamstrings once you get there?
Yeah.
Cool.
A little bit of pulling on back.
Okay, come back up. Can I just get you to do some playful stuff with your pelvis?
Yes.
If I get you to do, so we call it an anterior tilt. So in other words, it's like you want to stick your bum out. So you're kind of doing that, all right? Can you do that and then do that same movement?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
hold it there.
Right hamstring.
Right hamstring, still pretty good range. Cool. So I call that position. So a lot of people call that anterior tilt the pelvis. I call it Insta butt because it's all the butts that you see on Instagram. So now I'm going to do the reverse Insta butt. So in other words, you're going to do that scared dog thing. You're going to tuck your butt under like you're being chased. Tuck your tail under and then go again and see if you can tip from that hip. It's really tough to do because it's an odd position to hold yourself. What do you feel and where?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just,
so still really good
can't
range.
go any further.
Yeah, but that's a really good range though. So yeah. So really for back one, we just got that little pull in the right hamstring, haven't we? When we do Insta butt, but apart from that. Now I'm just going to grab a chair because I'm just going to do the front line now. I'm just going to check what's going on there. So this next one, what I want to do is, this is my favorite version, provided you're fine to weight bear on your hands. Yeah, cool. So I'm going to get you into this position here where your shoulders are over your hands. That foot is on the outside of the right hand. The other foot is back. So you're nice and long. You're going to lock out the back knee. What I'm interested in is where can this hip go? So in other words, that hip goes towards the ground with this knee locked out straight. Bang. And then back. And do it as an elastic movement. Don't kind of hang in there. And then we're going to check on the other side as well. So let's see. So keep that back leg locked. It's there and then comes back. So I'm just interested in what you are feeling, and I'll do the what I see part. So I'm just yeah. So
just below my hip.
So I want you to take note of how pulley that pull is.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll compare it side to side.
And also a little bit higher up in my hip as well.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing is also the hip wants to go down and then inwards towards your midline as well.
Right.
So it's obviously kind of looking for the extra range from somewhere else. And then let's check the other side. So this time I'm kind of interested in is how does it feel in comparison to the other side?
Completely stuck.
Yeah. So there's no real movement happening. So that right front is really jammed up. And is there anywhere else that's kind of letting you know that it exists whilst you're doing that?
No. Right.
All right. That's awesome. So what we're going to do is there's a few little nuances that we're going to go back and test now. But we're going to do that in a little while because I'm just going to check in with the crew now.
Yep.
And then we'll go from there. Okay, gang. That's the basic version of the appraisal that you've just seen there. What do we already know about Beck is that she has limitation around her right hip. We saw it. She told us about it. Okay. Now, Some people aren't as articulate as Beck or as tuned into their body to understand that stuff. So we have to help them with that. But what we know is that there's some really interesting bunching going on the outside of Beck's hips. So I checked her deep front line, which is that first one with the wide stance, and she didn't feel stuff in her deep front line. It was fine. She felt a bunching effect happening on the outside of her hips. So it's all she talked about. She didn't even talk about the pull really on the inside of the thighs, which is pretty much what 90% of other people are gonna talk about. But we know that there's a limitation at the front of the right hip. We know there's a limitation at the outside, the lateral side of that right hip, because her body was telling us, and you could see it, and her physical reaction was like, oh my God, you know, straight away. So straight away, we've got a few markers as to what's going on there. There's a few things about that first section. So I'm going to go back to the page right now, okay? So you'll see I was probing her to kind of give me information, tell me how you were feeling. I don't live in that body. So I don't know what's going on. We need to know what's going on in that body. And there's two reasons that we're doing this. What do they feel and what do you see? So I'm doing the visual observation, but what they feel is really important. And there's two reasons that we do that. Number one is we need as much information from them as possible, yes. But ironically, it's not the prime reason for doing the what do they feel part. It's to get them to tune into their bodies, because so many people are fully disconnected from the physical experience of their own bodies. So very, very important that we tune in, or we have them tune into their body and start actually noticing what's happening at their feet, what's happening at their ankles, what's happening in their legs, what's happening in their hips, what is happening in their spine, what's happening at the front of their body, what's happening in their shoulders, what's happening in their, how is their head feeling? We want to know that stuff, but we want them to know it. That's the most important thing. Because if in a little while, when we've gone through the appraisal and we're on to mobility work, which we're covering tomorrow, and you start giving them some mobility work in those areas where you see restriction, if they are disconnected from their body, they won't feel the change that's actually happening. You will visually see the change, but they won't feel it. It's really important that they get in touch with their body, kinesthetically experience it, and we'll talk about interoception tomorrow, but interoceptively feel it as well. So that you've actually just raised their awareness of their own bodies. It's really, really important that we do that, because otherwise, for them to get change, if they're not experiencing the change kinesthetically, again, you remember the Thomas Myers thing from earlier, kinesthetics is everything when you want to affect change when it comes to movement. The global movement pattern, I just did the sit reach action there. Now it could be anything. It will just, for me, what it normally means is a movement, because I see a lot of broken people. So it's a movement that highlights their problem. That's the one that I tend to go with. So people with a bad lumbar spine, quite often they'll just kind of start with a good morning and it'll be like, oh God, no, absolutely not. Okay, that's my movement for you. That's my global movement pattern. That's a whole body movement that actually highlights a problem that you are currently experiencing. So rather than sit and reach forward, I'm going to have them just bend forward with soft knees, and that will be my test. So it might not be something that I can even do as part of the appraisal, but it's a great test for me to keep going back to, because if they get further each time, I know I'm on the good stuff. Hip height, very important too. So I'm checking on the top, and again, your educators are really going to help you with this in the room. I'm checking how level is the pelvis, because if the pelvis is out, you can imagine that's going to put everything above and below out too. So if there's something that we can do to help that, that's really important. But for now, all we're trying to do is glean information about this person. We're not trying to change them at all. We're not giving them movement at this point. We're just gleaning information. This is an information gathering session only. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The appraisal is an information gathering session only. If one hip is down, now this, I'm going to just quickly stop the share for this one, because this is kind of an important point too. If one hip is low, and the other hip is high. What does that mean? So like for me here today, I've not done any movement, so you should be able to see my hip height difference. My right hip is significantly lower than my left, okay? That takes a lot of work each day to do anything with that. So is my left hip being pulled up? Or is my right hip being pulled down? So in the overwhelming majority of cases, in an environment which involves gravity, what do you think might be happening? The hip's going to go with gravity, isn't it? So actually what I see a lot of the time is people talking about high hip. Oh, I've got a high hip. So my high hip is like, oh, I've got to somehow get that hip down because it's being pulled up. Well, it's very unlikely, isn't it, in gravity that something's going to go anti-grav on you? No, most likely is the hip that's low is being pulled down or has gone with gravity as a result of some forces that we currently don't understand, okay? So I would say in at least 80% of cases, the hip that's low is being pulled down or has gone down, okay? So that's the one we're interested in, because by that hip going downwards, of course, it raises the opposite hip, doesn't it? So if we can do something about that, well, then we can actually help level out that pelvis. That is something that I do try to help people with as much as possible, which seems like I'm just looking at something like a static postural assessment and going, we need to change that. But what I know is that hips that aren't level can cause a whole heap of other things. So I do want to try and help people with that. Then we took you through 4 movements. Now those movements in themselves are actually mobility movements, but they tell us stuff because they challenge the tissues at length. And that's what we want to know. So we're going to go through that and break it down a little bit now. So I'll just bring that slide up because there are a few nuances along the way. If educators that are in the room, if you guys want to kind of do some demos for me when we get to the step 4, the myofascial movement, so that everyone in the rooms can actually see them in the flesh, that would be really, really great. And I'll kind of obviously be teaching from the screen. So the first thing, walk. We just want them to get in touch with what's happening there in their body, and something that's really normal to do. You heard me say, hey, you know, I've got them walking up and down. Can you do the walk that you normally do? Because it's so funny to watch people sometime. I'm just going to put my camera down. It's so funny to watch people sometime, and you get them to think, and that because they're thinking so hard, instead of going, oh yeah, well, I think this is going on and this is going on, this is going on, they suddenly stop and then start thinking, and they're like, And this is the walk that they're doing. And it's just like, do you walk around the supermarket like that? So you have to kind of snap them out of that. It's normally a funny moment, but I can guarantee you when people have to tune in, they slow down and they're like, oh God, what is going on? It's not necessarily a bad thing if it actually gives them some more information, but you then want to kind of have a look at how they walk normally. And I will give them clues or cues. So I will quite often say, I realize it's probably difficult to understand what I'm talking about when I say, how do you feel? But here's some examples. So I'll give them some examples from my walk, as I did earlier on with my, falling into my foot, I'm feeling more activation through my thigh, those kind of things. So they've got some guidance as to what to expect. You will, in my opinion, this is what works well. You walk with them for a bit. So you're explaining to them and they're talking to you. They don't feel quite as, self-conscious as that. And then at some point you'll just stop and let them and just say, hey, keep going, so that you can actually watch them walk as well, because you might pick up some stuff from that. I'm not looking for you to be expert gait analyzers from this. Just pick up some basics. So for example, look at their 3 major joints. How are they working? Is there, a roll in at the foot, or do they seem to push their weight on the outside? Is there a lack of articulation through their hips? I've done a session recently about hips, and I'm really interested in that articulation of the pelvis. So when you watch them walk away from you, what does their butt do? Does it seem fairly fixed and just do like that? Or is there some articulation that happens along the way? That's kind of a useful kind of little pointer as to what might be happening. Is the pelvis doing this? Is it able to do this? Is it able to do this, right? And then at the thoracic, what you'll see quite often is, what kind of arm swing might there be? You know, is there a bit of arm swing going on? Or do they seem just like, it's almost like they're fixed, yeah? So they're walking and there's just no movement. So this is their thoracic, right? That's what's happening with their thoracic. There's no articulation, doesn't go with anything. I'm having to tell my left arm to actually stop moving at the moment. So this is their walk. Okay, they look glued. But then you might want to check and go, okay, then are they glued? Or can they actually articulate through there and just say, hey, look, do an exaggerated arm swing for me. I'm just interested in how your arms are going. You might want to kind of do that. And then go, okay, then back to your normal walk. And then just see, do they go back to this and they're rigid? Or is there actually a little bit going? Because it might just be a neural patterning thing. With the global movement pattern, like I say, this could be their global movement pattern. You know, this could be their global movement. This could be their global movement pattern. It just depends on what you want. So I know Corinne quite often calls it the meaningful movement, which is another good term for it, isn't it? It's just like something that gives you value to give you some information about that particular body. I've had a lot of really interesting ones. I've had some where people are actually on the ground doing a movement in a prone position, because that tells them the most about what is firing up in their body in a weird way. But again, we want them to be tuned into that. You know, tell us what's going on. Okay, what exactly is it that you're feeling through there? Because we want them to describe that and connect with that feeling. By all means, I mean, I wrote some notes there because I thought, oh, that might be quite handy of what Beck is telling me there. But actually, what I really want is just for her to be in touch with that so that she will feel change when it happens. Then hip height. I'm getting, let me show you this. This is how my hands look, okay? Like this. That's what I'm looking to do, okay? Not this, okay? It's very difficult to tell a hip height when my fingers are kind of all bunched up like so. I'm looking for a nice flat way of doing that. When you go through this yourselves, I know I've watched different people do these things. And I know, for example, my educator in Wellington, Corinne, actually doesn't even look. So I'm a visual person. I like to see, okay, then what's going on here? But what Corinne will do is close her eyes and actually put her head right down, because she's fully kinesthetic. So she can tell a hip height based on feel, and she needs to take her eyes out of it for an accurate kind of knowledge of what's going on with hips. You do it how you want to do. But I just want to show you something with Beck here. Because if I get you here, Beck, I'm just going to check. Okay. So what I did with Beck was, hey, I'm known to Beck. She's comfortable with me. It might be that a client has just met me and he's comfortable with me, and that's fine. And it's fine for me to actually bring my eyes to the height of her pelvis and explain that what's going on, and be in front of her like this and actually put my hands on her body and do this, okay? And that's absolutely fine. Just as an FYI, Beck, that's much more level than it was because we've done them, yeah. So that's okay, but it might be that this is a guy the size of Pablo and a lady the size of Karina, and Karina needs to check Pablo's hips, but she's never met him before, and maybe the energy between them isn't as comfortable. So it might be, I'm just going to check your hip height. So imagine hips are up here. It's just going to be like this, yeah? So that's less intrusive for both of you, more comfortable for both of you, right? It might be that you do, we'll call it the Austin method, and you might kind of be, okay, I'm just going to check this, yeah? And that's okay too, but make sure it's comfortable, because sometimes if you're female and it's a large male in front of you, you just met them, bending down and getting to their pelvis height might feel really weirdly uncomfortable. Yeah, so I don't want you feeling uncomfortable, and I don't want them feeling uncomfortable either. This is a really simple, just a little kind of a tester for us. We just need that information. But make sure that you don't kind of get yourself into a situation that's just like the energy's wrong, it just doesn't feel right. Okay, so do that from, oh God, from behind. Sorry, Beck. So if necessary, oh God, we're already there. So you get the picture anyway, everyone. If in doubt, don't do it from the front, just do it from behind, okay? Moving on into the myofascial movements. Educators, you might want to just show them some of this. I'm going to break it down a bit more because I didn't do all the nuances of the movements, and I want to go through all the nuances that you might want to check as part of the appraisal. I didn't check my time on the appraisal, but I'm assuming it was about a quarter of an hour. And that's where you'll be, you'll just have this information, then you'll move on to the next part. In an hour, you can absolutely revolutionize someone. So I started, there is no particular order for the appraisal that you need to do these movements in. You just choose your own order that you particularly like. I tend to start with the deep front line, and I don't even know why anymore. It just feels right to me. But as you saw with Beck, I'm just going to bring this camera down just a tad more. What I'm interested in knowing is what is happening through the deep front line, which starts at the big toe, goes behind the ankle up through tib posterior popliteus fascia, and then comes to the inside of the knee, and then becomes the adductor complex, pelvic floor, deep core muscles, diaphragm, holding every internal organ in place, ending up at the tongue and the temples. We need to create length in that line. We can test it one at a time so you can get a left and a right. If I wanted to create length in the line, I could just do a sumo squat, bang, done. But it doesn't tell you anywhere near as much as the way we do it to left and right. So we are going to test, in this case, the right side deep front line. This is what we're testing at this point in time. So the right leg is straight. The spine is nice and tall. We want the pelvis to actually shift downwards towards the straight side, because just moving the upper body, which is what you'll see a lot of people do, isn't enough. So I normally get people to place their hand into that groove created by the greater trochanter at the top of the leg there, whether it be a fist or a heel of hand, and I'll get them to actually push that side of their pelvis down as they go towards the knee and then come back. And you get them to describe what they feel. So in my case, so Beck was feeling it all on the outside really, but in my case, I'm a little bit more stereotypical in that I'm feeling it through the inside of my thigh, but particularly inside the hip. So people quite often will get adductor or inside the hip. It's very, very common from that, and then come back. Always doing that as an elastic movement. And by all means, if you want to join in and do that with me, by all means, you can do that, but it's going to be interesting then once you come to do the appraisal run through yourselves, because you're already going to be a little bit more mobile than you were. So I get them to do a few like that, then I get them to switch sides and sink towards that. Things that I'm looking for that client to avoid, okay, is, I'll show you side on. You see them doing this, yeah? There's flexion of the spine as they go. We don't want flexion of the spine as they go. We want them over the top of their hips, driving in alignment with their leg. So that's one thing. Number two is rotation. Yeah, it's just like to get a bit further, they're kind of going here, or they're going kind of like here. There's a kind of weird, something weird going on. Number three, this knee, the straight knee, it bends so they can go further. So instead of keeping it straight, it bends. It wants to bend. That is a sign of massive tension in the deep front line on that side. If their knee just keeps bending the whole time. Number four, you see this happen. Yeah, it's all this. So they're curved spine collapsing in, because nothing's going to come from here. So they're getting it all from here. Yeah. So it looks like, so if I keep my hips, if I keep my hips fairly level so that I'm not getting this sink in the hips. Look at this. This is me. Like, this is me. Oh yeah, I'm doing my deep front line. Where are you feeling it? In my case, intensely in my quadratus lumborum area of my low back. All right, that's a bit weird. It's not a test for that. You're thinking to yourself as you're doing that. Oh, that's because the hip isn't going down. They're not sinking into that. See how much further I go now? Because that's a test for the deep front line. It's not a test on the flexibility of my lateral lumbar region. So collapsing through here probably means there's no movement in here. Yeah. So you need to look for those things with that particular test. Next up, lateral line. Yeah. So we're getting them to drive from the hip. Getting them to drive from their hip. What you'll see a lot of this kind of thing. Yeah. Hip's not really kind of a lot of this. Yeah. Because and it may just be a cueing thing. They just don't understand that the pelvis has got to shift fully in that direction. Yeah. So for me, I'm a terrible cheater, and quite often I have to do it to a mirror because I do this and I don't realize I've already curved my spine there. So for me to be tall, I'm here and then I'm there. Okay, then I'm still tall. Great. All right then. So this is my range, because what happens is people want to cheat. We're built to cheat because it's the way that we can do better. Okay, doesn't mean we're doing it consciously. Our bodies are doing that. I think it was Ian O'Dwyer who said the body's designed to cheat, right? It's just designed to do what we ask of it, right? So it does a better job by going, all right, then what if I do this? I can go further. But really, is this a test? No, it's not. Is this telling me about this line? No, I've got to keep it tall and drive into that. What am I looking for? Well, quite often, if I show you side on, you'll see people spin out, okay? I can get much further if I rotate my pelvis forward a little bit. Bang. All right, great. So if I use basically my butt, I've got a much more mobile butt than I have a lateral hip. So my body will go, oh, wow, look at what I can do. So if I show you that from the front, this is my range. Yeah. Now, if I rotate out, wow, look at JP. Look at, oh my God, he's just an example of what this stuff can do, right? So bang, okay. Number 2 is forward flexion. Whoa, isn't that amazing what you can do? Yeah, watch me from the front. Wow, JP's amazing. Yeah, I'm just getting that all from forward flexion. Okay, no, you've got a pane of glass here and a pane of glass here. This is your plane of motion. There is none of that. There is none of this and none of this. However, I let people do a few reps like that first because it tells me something, right? If they're spinning out, that's what I call that rotation. I call it a spin out. So if they spin out with their hips, well, that tells me something. All right. Okay, then they've obviously got limitation through there because their body is naturally trying to get away from that movement. Same with that forward flexion to try and get that. Either it's an ego thing or there's an issue there that's getting them to do that. If they collapse through, their spine, well, actually, okay, then the body is compensating by taking it all from here. It's obviously very mobile here and not very mobile here. See what I mean by that? If I go here and then someone goes, the hip stops there, but their body just keeps going. Okay, then, well, here doesn't have an elasticity problem, does it? Here has an elasticity problem, yeah? So that's that part. Now, the nuance that I didn't show you earlier, it's foot positioning. You can play with the foot positioning so that it tells you, is it more anterior lateral, so more this chunk of tissue at the front of the lateral line, or posterior lateral, more at the back of the lateral line? Because that's kind of handy, because then you can nuance their mobility routine so that you can target it more effectively and they get a bigger and better change more quickly, which is what we all want, right? We all want kind of fireworks going off in our studios, yeah? Not literally. So I'll show you that. And again, educators in the studio, you definitely need to demonstrate these because this is something that takes a little while to get the hang of. I might just put that down a little bit more because I really want you to make sure you can see my feet okay. I'm going to actually go a bit closer. All right. So normal position for lateral line. My feet are about an inch apart. I'm tall and I'm driving into that. Okay, then. So what we know is that my right hip is my stubborn hip today. And it's been my stubborn hip for approximately 10 years of days. So, but is there a particular part of that hip that is more problematic? Okay, I'm going to creep. Remember, we are testing the lengthening side. Okay, that's what happens. Whenever we are testing something, it's the one that we're putting on length that is the test. If I take my left foot and put it half a footstep forward, sorry, half a foot length forward. So in other words, my big toe is in line with the middle of my arch, and then bend my knees and keep a tall spine and drive into that hip. What do I feel? Well, I feel like I'm even more limited. I don't go as far. And you can probably see that too, okay? And then if I slide that half a foot length back, I get a lot more range. Can you see that? And it feels a lot easier. So here's the thing to nail, and again, it's in the videos for after the mentorship as well. So don't worry, but it'll be good to learn this over the next 3 days. When my left foot is forward of my right, and I'm testing my right side, yeah, it tells me about the anterior lateral, the front of the lateral line, right? When my foot goes posterior, it tells me about the posterior of that opposite lateral line, yes? So I'm going to do that again. My foot comes forward, half a foot length. I drive into that hip. I don't go as far. It tells me that I'm definitely sticky at the front, i.e. the anterior lateral line. I slide it half a foot length back. I drive into that. I'm much freer. That tells me I am definitely better off in the posterior lateral line on that right side, okay? And then when we compare it back to the 2 feet next to each other, it's very similar to when my foot slid forward. So for me, for this body, I've got a mid to anterior lateral line issue on my right side. That's a pretty powerful bit of information for you, because my right shoulder, for example, my right shoulder sits lower than my left shoulder, doesn't it? See that? That's interesting. He's got a limitation at his right hip, and it's kind of bunching, it's kind of restricted through his right hip, and his right shoulder sits low. Has he got a right shoulder problem, I wonder? Or is there something else going on? So that is very useful information for those lateral lines. So prevent all the kind of nuances, watch what they do, because their compensations will come through, then help them realign, cue them into this alignment when they do it. Then if you need more information, so I would definitely do that for Beck. If you want to just test that one on your right hip, Beck, because we know that right lateral. While I'm just talking here, I'm going to get you to test anterior lateral, and I'll get you stand there so everyone can see you too. I'm a bit boring after a while. And then just check, check how that feels with, I would slide that foot a little bit further forward. Yeah, and then go into that and drive in, and just check for us whether you think it's more anterior lateral or posterior lateral on that one. So let me bend down through. So that's, so Beck set up the opposite to me. How cool is that? And her reaction, did you see her reaction there? There was it was almost a visceral reaction. You went, oh, right? Straight away. Her left foot goes posterior. That is testing the posterior lateral of the right side, and straight away, bang, it just won't go anywhere. So Beck's the opposite to me. So where do I want to target her mobility work? It's obviously going to be much more to the posterior lateral than, and for me, the more the anterior lateral. So next up, we're going to do the posterior chain or the superficial backline tester, and that is the good morning. We've got a couple more nuances to do for you though. So what I was interested in with Beck was she went to that point, and then I got her to Instabutt, and then she went again. And in my case, I don't know if you can see this difference, but this is me kind of neutral for me. I Instabutt, and that's what I've got. And then I scared dog myself, and that's what I've got. So it's a very different result when you do that. The basic one that we do first, that just straight good morning. Okay, then let's just check. And all right, then that tells you, is there a limitation in their back line? Beck's pretty damn good. So she went at least to kind of 90 degrees in all, but was there a change in one or the other? It was mild. What I'm testing for there is when we play with the hip position, what we're testing for is whether it's more in the lower half or the upper half of the posterior chain. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm glad you asked, because here, can you see, let me come up here. There we go. All right then. So here we go. We've got the lower half. It goes from the calcaneus to this sacrotuberous ligament. Okay, that's where it joins on the pelvis. Now, if we were to instabutt, i.e. anteriorly tilt the pelvis, what you'll note is that we're going to have a situation where we are asking that portion of tissue. Can you stand kind of like there, facing that way there? In fact, diagonal kind of like that. So we've got, hopefully this will stand out. I should probably have some kind of day glow color of elastic, that might be better. So that's where it's joining, like so, all right? So we've got that. Now if Beck instabutts for me, straight away you've got added length. So it's just lengthened. Then we get them to do their, forward fold, or what is it called again? No, the when you lean forward. Good morning. I've managed just to forget my actual thing.
So you're ready to
so go anteriorly tilted. So in other words, instabutt and bend. Yeah. So it's already pre-lengthened. So it's going to ask more on that chain through there. Okay. Okay. Relax. So we've got this situation where we've got, okay, then that's just gone a bit longer, and then we're going to test it. Okay. So really we're testing the lower portion of the superficial back line with that. Then if we do the same kind of thing, but we're here coming down and through. Okay. So if Beck now instabutts again, we've just shortened that. We've just actually given the upper half the additional amount of elasticity available. Whereas if she does the scared dog thing, there's a lot more length on that. So when we do the scared dog, we're putting extra length on that top portion, and we're seeing where she can go through there. Now, we had a really cool experience. I remember when Corinne and Sam came to Perth, and we had a young lady called Cassie, and she was heavily into yoga, and she was trying to improve her forward fold so she could get her chest touching her thighs. And she'd been smashing away at her superficial back line, but she just couldn't quite get there. What she didn't realize at the time was that she was unbelievably elastic and flexible through the lower portion of her superficial back line. But the moment we put her into a situation where we tucked her butt under, so like bang, okay, straight away, that chain just got longer in the top part. And then she went to go, she could barely get anywhere. What was happening was where she could get her improvement from wasn't with hamstring flexibility, which is what she'd been smashing away at, right? It was actually by doing a whole heap of movements, by posteriorly tilting her pelvis and bringing all this extra elasticity to the top half of her superficial back line, okay? Because it's a whole chain. So what's happened is the bottom half has been letting the top half get away with murder for years, right? We just have to ask the whole, it's been basically is what you might call stealing motion, yeah? So the top half has been limited and shortened. So it's been stealing motion from the bottom half. So that's really good. But what we can also do is we can test it left and right as well. So in other words, we can actually test it, whether it be in a neutral pelvis. I'm going to call neutral pelvis just their neutral, not neutral as in some weird kind of, Swiss pair of hips. Neutral is their neutral, okay? So What we can then do is we can go neutral, or we can go Instabutt, or we can go scared dog with the hips and test whether it's left or right. So in my case, we know, for example, that in my case, I have an issue with the lower portion of my superficial back line, because what you'll note is if I tuck my butt under scared dog styly, and then I go and I go and I go, I'm just going to try and keep hold of that, and I'm going to go. Okay, that's my range. Okay, so that suggests that in between my head and my butt, I've just put extra length on that part of that line, and yeah, I can get to 90 degrees. I can get, you know, parallel to the floor with that. And where do I feel it at the bottom? I still don't feel it in my back. What stops me? It's still my hamstrings. That's where I feel it. So even then, my back that's pre-lengthened and then lengthened some more, my back goes, I can still go further. It's my hammies that are going to stop me from doing that. So that's hamstrings there. But if I actually do the Instabutt, so bring the back of my butt right up high, and I do that Instabutt, and then I go again, that's my range. Okay, so you can see the difference. It's really quite different. All right. So we know that this lower portion is where my limitation is. If I now were to put my left foot half a foot length forward of my right, what I've effectively done there is, can you see how I've put extra length on the left side? So in other words, between that big toe up the back of my body to my head, or to that same brow ridge, the left eyebrow ridge, is a little bit longer, and go into that and go, okay, then how far can I get? That's how far I can get, everyone. That's my range today, okay? Then I can slide my right foot half a foot length forward, Instabutt, and okay, not much more in it, but I've got a tad more. It feels like I've got a tad more. Beck, did I get a tad more or not? So we might just get Beck, because like you can't trust your own body, okay? So I'm Instabutting, I've got my right foot forward, so my right side's been tested. That's my limit. I've got nothing. Ironically, equal amount of sensation in my left as my right there as a client. Put my left foot forward, Instabutt, and wow, I got nothing. Yeah, so my left side, lower superficial back line is really where the most gains can be had. Yeah, hopefully this is kind of making some sense. When you do it, that's when it's all going to come together. We're going to do this next one, then you're all going to have a break, and then you're going to be into this yourself, okay? So for the superficial front line, there are alternatives to that should you need it, and we can do a standing version if they're worried about being on their hands, but for now we're going to stick with the original. What we're interested in there is, let's pop this chair in position. Okay, I'm going to show you from the front and from the side. So I'll show you from the front first. So we've got their shoulders over their hands. So quite often people are setting up and they're kind of like here. So they're kind of doing this. So there's no weight on their hands whatsoever. So we want them to actually be taking some weight through there. We want them locking out that back knee. I quite often will put my pen on their hip and say, this is the direction of travel I'm looking for. So here we are. So we're looking for that hip to go down. I just want to show you a couple of things from the front. I might just go slightly. So sometimes what you can get is that as people go towards the ground, there's this shift, yeah? So there's like a shift that happens to one side. That's telling you something straight away. Something else that might happen, if I show you through here, is they kind of rotate out. So this happens. So rather than them going straight and going, okay, then I can't go any further, you get this kind of thing where they're kind of doing this, okay? Because if I do that, I've got more range in my tight outside right than I have my front right, okay? So here's what I've got there. If I rotate out, bang, I've got more, all right? So you'll see a bit of that. You'll see a bit of shifting going on. The absolute classic is the knee bend. Okay, so here you are, and it's like bang, and they're like bomb. All right, that's an absolute classic. They've definitely got some issues through the upper thigh and into the hips if that knee's bending, isn't it? Because, excuse me, if you've got some stuff going on through here, and then you've got into this position, and you want to put extra length on, well, if your knee bends, it just lets the hip get away with a whole heap more. So that knee bend is very telling when you do that. So you're looking for them to drive straight towards the ground, come back, straight towards the ground, come back. This is what I've got today, everyone. Now I've been corrected on all my faults. And then left side. Okay, so this is what I've got. This is what I've got. Okay, so back, do I have more this side? So it feels more open. So as a client, I'm saying feels a lot easier on my left. There's no pain. I just feel the tension when it stops. On my right side as a client, I'm going, oh, it feels much more stubborn, and oh, it's actually quite uncomfortable when I get to the kind of end range. But it's always an elastic movement. As you have heard me probably say in the lectures, and if you've been following me this last couple of years, you would have heard me say ad nauseum, it has to be elastic. The tissues are elastic. If we hold them in that position, this is what we turn the tissues into, an unstable mess. Okay, we need this not to be the case. We want to maintain some stability whilst testing the end range motion. It is called a movement appraisal for a reason. It's not called a static postural assessment or a static assessment. It's a movement appraisal. That's what we're doing. We are appraising movement in order to be able to prescribe movement, which is our, that's our part in the world. That's what we're allowed to do. So we don't want this to happen. After 4 seconds, this starts to happen. After 10 seconds, it's happening, okay? I would argue that beyond about 2.5 seconds, based on my own experiential testing, you're already starting to lose that. So when people want to kind of get into it, they can by all means bounce a little bit, like a slow bounce at the bottom, fine. But if they're there and they just go bang and then they're just holding it there, within about 2.5 to 3 seconds, what I've noticed is that elasticity is already being lost. So we need, I just say, hey, look, you're just going to push into it, hold for a second, come back. Push into it, hold for a second, come back. That's what we're interested in. That's what will give you some consistency in your answers for your appraisal. Can anyone tell me if there are questions? You will have to unmute yourselves. But are there questions on that before we go into a whole heap of appraising each other? Are there any questions? Because we're at that kind of vital stage. So if you can unmute for the question, I can see one in Wellington.
Yeah, hi, JP. Pablo just asked if you could demonstrate the superficial front line for people that can't put their weight onto their hands on the floor or on the steps.
Sure, yeah, that's a good one. So superficial front line for so sometimes there are knee issues, back issues, shoulder issues. There are all sorts of different types of things that people have going on that means that they're not comfortable going into that position. So I'll show you the kind of the way we can adapt that. So I never say regress because it's not, it's just a different version of the same thing, right? So we're looking to put length through that front chain of tissue, yeah? We're looking to test it at length. So to do that, first of all, what you can actually do is do the same thing, only using a wall. So for example, if I'm here, instead of going low to a chair, I can still create some loading in that kind of plane just by doing this. So I can be here, locking out that back knee, locking out my elbows and going through there. Now, I don't think I really stress the locking of the elbows quite as much as I should have. You bring that screen down a little bit. That's great. So the locking of the elbows is important, and it's classic, by the way. It's another thing you to look for with this. When people are going down through here, this is classic. Bend the elbows. They can get so much further. I'll show you side on. This is a real classic that you'll see. Is like they get to here and then they're like, you know, and it's just like, wow, I'm amazing. Look at the range that I've got here. Yeah. Okay, then lock out your elbows. Oh, my hip doesn't go anywhere. So lock out the elbows. It tests the hip. The bent elbows do not. So first up, take it to the wall, because this is much less loading on through the hands and the shoulders. That is a classic way of doing that. And you can still do this exactly the same thing. It's just that you're going against the wall instead of leaning on a chair. So remember, the whole kind of effect of gravity thing is gravity coming down when we're upright through our head. That's, you know, let's call that, you know, a factor of 1. You go fully prone, so to the floor prone, that's a factor of about 4. So in other words, it loads the tissues 4 times more than through your head. It deloads the spine, but fully loads up the tissues. So the tissues are working 4 times harder in a prone position. So a lot of people can't get into that position very easily. So this is probably a factor of 3 at this angle through here. So bring it up and back and through. So you might be at a factor of 2 here. If they can't be doing that, then you might want to go to a factor of 1. It feels more nuanced, and this is why I don't teach this one. I used to teach this one as part of the appraisal, but it was too nuanced for a lot of people. So what I would get people to do is actually take a kind of a reasonable step forward and then plant the heel at the back. This incidentally is in the videos on the graduate page on Facebook. So all of these are videoed. All of this whole stuff is videoed as well. But you then go, okay, then they've planted their back foot. If I show you front on, what's important is that what happens quite often is that back foot points outwards. I'm going to put my shoes on because I want you to see my feet. And they're a different color to the rest of me and the floor. My feet and the floor are a little bit too similar in color. Okay, hopefully you can see that a bit better now. So I've taken a step forward. I'll plant the heel. This is what you see a lot. You see that foot go out because this is where they're comfortable, all right? So you go, oh, could I just get you to get your back foot pointed the same way as your front foot? So you get them to do that and they go like that. And quite often they go, whoa, okay. You already know there's going to be something to find when they do that, okay? So it's like, whoa, oh God, I'm so unstable. It doesn't mean that their foot goes behind the other foot, because that is like you're literally on a tightrope, right? There still needs to be space, just like when you're walking, there's space in between your feet. But bring that heel back around so you're aligned through there. You're nice and tall through here. You are still looking to actually lengthen and straighten that knee and be nice and tall through here. And you're sinking into that front knee and coming back. And what, if anyone's doing it at the moment, what you'll probably find, a lot of you, is that as you sink into that front knee, what you want to do is put some length through this front line, but you're not really feeling it, because what you're feeling is a pull in your calf. So number 1 is, that might tell you a little bit about your superficial back line. Number 2 is, we really want to know more about the front line. So I'll get them to do the scared dog. So in other words, tuck their butt under into a posterior tilt, and it brings more length to the front of the body. In fact, the lower portion of that superficial front line. It tells your whole hip more. And then you get them to do this. Suddenly it all goes into the hip. If they're still feeling it in the back, you don't need to worry about their front anymore. Okay, so you've given elasticity to this back line, you've asked more elasticity of the front line, and you're sinking into it. It's quite a nuanced movement because you can't go very far. Okay, then obviously you'll check the other side. Can they go as far? Well, in my case, I can go a bit further without my heel coming up. When the heel comes up, you know that's your marker that you've gone far enough. So that's the one that I tend to go with, but I'll work up through the angles from chair to wall first, even being almost upright on the wall. Still, I find that better than going into this freestanding one. Reason being, this is safety here. So your hip's going to give you a lot more information. If you've got 4 points of contact with the ground, well, with a solid object in this case, than you would otherwise get. So even upright and doing that last one, but with your hands on the wall, really, really great as well. It tells you a little bit about what you need to know. Hopefully that gave you a good alternative for doing that, but it's really great, that last one, for when people have, you know, problematic knees as well, because you're not asking for too much knee bend with that either. We got another one, Karina. Yeah, that's good. So I need you to unmute and then. Cool.
So JP, it's a question from Philippa. Does this need to, the appraisal be bare feet?
So wherever possible, barefoot, yes, because it will tell you, just the visual will tell you a little bit about their feet. So even if they wear orthotics and they wear them all the time, even in their slippers, I would say, would you be okay for the next 20 minutes to be barefoot? Because wherever possible, it's going to tell you a whole heap more about what's going on in their body than anything else. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. So that, for me, if being barefoot creates more stress for them than keeping their shoes on, I'm leaving their shoes on. Because if I'm assessing someone in a more stressed state, it's kind of going to be like, oh, this isn't really giving me a great idea of where we can help them. And it will still give you brilliant results. You just won't know as much about what's going on at the foot. But their reason for not wanting to take their shoes off will tell you something about their what's going on. And if it is orthotics, it will tell you even more about that as well. Because as you can imagine, when we did that shoulder turn thing earlier on, all we were doing was changing one thing at the foot. Now, the first thing was we locked the skeleton, but the second thing was we locked the arch. We lifted the arch up and we didn't allow it to move. What does an orthotic do most of the time? It stops the foot from moving in pronation and supination. So it's locking the foot. So we already know that their feet don't function that well, and their feet are going to have a knock-on effect as to what else can happen all the way up to their shoulders. With a normal turn, when we do this, and we go round and we come back, what you'll notice is when you're here, you are in pronation. When you're here, you are in whatever your version of supination is. It mightn't be that great, but you are supinating your version of supination, right? So when you're doing that, what we're actually doing is we're just saying, okay, then that is pronation and supination. That is gait. But this, if I do this and I'm going, look at me, I'm doing gait. You wouldn't think so, but your feet are experiencing gait at that point in time. But seeing the barefoot is really, really valuable. So wherever possible, we do that. And I think maybe twice in the last 10 years, I might have had to do it with shod. All the other people have been fine with bare feet. So hopefully that's okay. But Philippa, does that mean you've got the occasional person who's just really uncomfortable being in their bare feet? Are they worried about something about being barefoot?
No, I think most people who come to see me expect to not have shoes on, but just I anticipated that was what your answer was going to be, but thank you.
Yeah, cool. So we will talk about this on one of the other days, but I'll trail it now. Thanks, Karina. I'll trail it now, which is to say that this whole system is going to give you new services to offer. So movement appraisal is going to be a service. So movement appraisal and movement coaching can now be a thing, can now be a service line offering that you do. Because coming in for a movement appraisal and then getting a prescription of mobility work and exercise, that's going to be a thing in itself. You will get clients that only come to you for movement coaching. So they're not in there for training, they're actually in there for greater effectiveness and efficiency in their physical bodies. This is what's going to happen. So, you know, when everyone is used to coming in shoes, yeah, well, they're used to coming in, they do exercise, a thing that they know to be this concept of exercise, but there's going to be these new things. And I would highly encourage you right now just to get used to the idea that you can put new service lines out there rather than just going, this is a classic thing to do, right? You learn more and more, you get better and better, you are worth more and more, but it all just gets absorbed into what you're doing and you're still charging the same price, right? Start separating stuff out, okay? Then if they're in for training and they're in for stuff that's like generic for you, I know it'll be still targeted for you, but generic for you, okay, then this is quite an easy thing to do because it's exercise and I've got this collection of tools and a collection of exercises that I love to do and I know which ones work for these people, I'm gonna do that. But if it's something as specific as, I'm gonna look at your unique body, I'm going to tell you stuff that no one has ever been able to tell you about it before. I'm going to tell you some of the sources of the issues that you've been dealing with potentially for your whole life. And then we're going to move forward and we're going to move you to greater effectiveness and efficiency in your body so that your body's going to move better, you're going to function better, but then everything else is going to start moving and functioning better within you. Plus, you're going to change your emotional state as a result of that. Your emotional state is also going to have a feedback into your body as well. That's some powerful shit right there. And that needs to be recognized as a separate thing, as a separate service line, as an awesome thing that you can actually do for someone that is valuable. So for me, that's where you have to kind of start adapting in your own brains. All right, then there's a bit more to this and it's really, really important. And I need to recognize my value because I can tell you as of this morning, Perth time, there were 85 next levelers on Earth, okay? So after this weekend, there's gonna be another 8 out of Wellington and 3 more coming out of Auckland. That's 96. There's less than 100 people on Earth that know a system that you know that is incredibly powerful and takes someone as a whole human. That means that scarcity makes you incredibly valuable, okay? So I've just realized in a conversation with Emma McCann, our Auckland Emma here, the other day, that I'm going, okay, then, well, I used to charge $100. Now I charge $250, yeah, for someone just to come and see me and for me to tell them what's going on with them, right? And what I realized was, for the most part, I'm spending between 90 minutes and 2 hours with them. It's not an hour session anymore because I go through mental, emotional state, you know, lifestyle habits, all sorts of stuff with them. And I'm taking them on. And then I realized like $250, they see me once normally. They go away and that's it. Their life has changed. They don't need to see me again, maybe for 6 months, right? Is that worth $250 to them? Well, they've probably spent $5,000 before they get to me on physios and chiros and, you know, a shrink or, you know, whatever. What on earth am I doing? Delivering a completely life-changing change to their world for $250. It's insane, right? So what we already know is that my business model is I see people once, all right? They come to me, they get their answers, right? They get answers that have not been able to get from anywhere else. That's where I am now, right? But for you guys, you're going to give them answers that they've never heard from anywhere else. And it's alongside some other services that you offer. But what's the value on that? Okay. The value isn't on your time anymore. It's on what outcome you can bring. Yeah. So my value needs to go up again based on outcome. Okay. Then what's that worth? What is that guy that came in with a sore shoulder who was about to go for shoulder surgery and a cortisone injection that day and for shoulder surgery within a few months? What is it worth for him to come to see me and me identify that it's actually a problem with his posterior hip on the opposite side and the pain to go away whilst he's with me, right? A 90% improvement whilst he's with me, okay? What is that worth? What is that outcome worth? Not he spent 90 minutes with me, right? And I went, bang, here, we're onto it, right? Because it looks easy, right? That's irrelevant, isn't it? What is the outcome worth? And that's what you're gonna have to start re-evaluating how you look at what you offer and who you are, because there is so much value in who you are doing what you do, yeah? So start evaluating your value and your services based upon the outcomes that you deliver, not on the amount of time that you've spent with those people. And Corinne will tell you, we've had long conversations and there's been a dramatic change in what she does with her functional health stuff now, because it is so ridiculously valuable that we needed to work on pretty much tripling the price that she started with, because of the outcome that it delivers. It's completely life-changing. This can be completely life-changing. Yes, you have to price it so that people can actually come and see you, and you might want to start, slowly. But genuinely, these are the kind of values that it's worth. So to come and see me, it needs to probably be about twice what I'm charging. That's what I'm looking at. Because if they spent $5,000 to get to me, spending $500 and never having to see any of those people again is very, very good value for money. And they walk out of here and I'm thinking, God, it's just costing $250. Wow, that's nothing, right? It's nothing compared to what happens elsewhere. So we need to start valuing ourselves in that way. Karina, you said there's another question?
We're okay now. There's a quick question.
They're okay? They just want me to stop. Is that what it is?
Well,
all right. Thank you, team. I would say let's reconvene in 15 to 20. Well, I'll be here on the hour. So in your case, that's 4 p.m. and in my case, it's 12 noon. I'll be here on the hour. I just want to give you a couple of little bits of advice, and then it's you. So you can now start kind of processing what's about to happen. You are about to do the next level appraisal for the first time. I'm excited. I'm hoping that you are too. But in the meantime, chill out, rest, have some food, do some wraps, whatever.
I'll go mute again, shall I?